All right, okay, it is after 7. We have quorum of at least one posted committees tonight. So I'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee to order. I don't see any Finance Committee members on Zoom, so I don't think I need to do a roll call. To order. I see 2 Select Board members on Zoom, so I will let you all know if a 3rd Select Board member appears in the room here or anything like that. Yeah, we did see Karen Herrick around, so we're liable to. And then for school committee, I see 1, 2. Just 1, yes, that gets us to 2. Oh, okay, all right, I see, yes, Karen, so, someone want to call the, select board? Or we have, what's that? Chris and Karen Rhodes-Gillis.
Karen, do you want to call it to order since you're in the room?
Yeah. Oh, Karen Rhodes-Gillis asked if you could call to order because you're in the room.
That's fine. So, yeah, I'd like to call the Reading Select Board to order. Chris,
Here.
Karen,
Yes.
Karen Herrick here. Thanks.
All right, so welcome everyone. The first order of business is an opportunity for public comment. Thanks for Dax for getting that in, if not the original vote to the agenda. But we do want to hear from the public. So do we have any public comment? I see Angela. You want to say your name and street?
Okay.
I don't know what's the microphone. I assume that we were working from microphones on the ceiling, which you are probably as close to as we are. So,
Okay.
I mean, speak clearly so you can be heard. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Angela Benda, Orchard Park Drive, and precinct 5 town meeting member. Thank you, Town Manager Wellman, for the budget proposals that you put forward, and CFO Engstrom for the work on the proposed budget. There are a couple things that I would like to talk about. The first one is with administrative services. On page 5, and the boards and committees are once again this year asking for money. I was completely dismayed when the boards, committees, and commissions appeared before the select board for requests, and the chiding of a staff member for a request for $2,000 for a bench for Mallet Soames, and basically telling him, sorry, it's broken, you're just going to have to repair it. Last year, select board members also told the Trails Committee they couldn't have a couple $1,000s for materials for boardwalks and repairs. Passive recreation is still recreation, and it is the recreation of choice for a large number of residents. It seems that there's no limit to the amount of money that we will spend on sports if it involves a court or a field or a floor. But regarding walking in town forests, boards, benches in a conservation area, it seems that there is no request too small that the town cannot say no to if it's for passive recreation. So I know that this is the town manager's preliminary budgets. I would hope that, like, on page 5 and 6, that even if there are cuts, even if you know, the override doesn't pass or whatever, to really consider that how much these small asks can make to these committees. And think of the millions and millions and millions we spend year after year after year for sports, and the little amount for people who recreate in the town forest and our natural areas. And then the other thing that I'm asking you to also is on page 7, $55,000 for elder and human services programming. I think that the programming, I know Reading has always done what they could with the money that they've had, but I do know that other towns have much larger budgets for elder and human services programming. And I see that in the level 2, it gets cut back, and in the override, it goes all the way down. So I know that these are preliminary budgets, or, you know, they're asks, nothing nothing is set in stone yet. It's still early in the process. But I'm asking the finance committee to, consider the highest level for these things, for the elder and human services programming. There are some, there is a money barrier that will keep some elder people from the senior center, from the new recal, and I want the availability to be there, and I hope that, we are really thinking about equity, in what services we provide, what recreational activities we provide to, all town residents. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes. Chris, please go ahead.
Thank you, Joe. Chris Haley, 71 Tennyson Road. I just want to correct the record on the $2,000 bench asterisk that was still covered under warranty. I will not be giving $2,000 to anybody to replace items that are covered by warranty. I don't care if they're benches, playgrounds, hockey equipment, a snowblower. It's under warranty. Get it replaced under warranty. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mind if I hand the virtual gavel over to the town manager for reorganization?
Yes, I'd be happy to. It's no, we don't have a real gavel tonight.
Thank you next one. Can we steal one?
No, that's all right, that's all right.
Everybody wanna go-
Wait a minute. Somebody-
Oh.
I'm so-
Oh, all right, okay,
It's so rare, so rare. Oh. Sorry.
Please,
That's a wonderful.
I know. It's so rare I get to touch the gavel. No, all right, well, we're here for the reorganization. Finance, right, this evening. Do I hear any nominations for chair?
I have one. I nominate Emily's.
Second.
Okay, a second. Are there any other nominations for chair?
I'm about to say, I will nominate Marianne Dow.
Is there-
That's why I nominated
Second.
her.
Ah!
So do you want me? Never mind.
So, and we have a second. Emily, do you accept the nomination?
I don't feel like I have a choice not to.
I mean, I don't think that's how it works. I think you always have a choice.
I would very much prefer not to, but if pressed into service, yeah,
Why would you prefer not to?
I am in a very busy season of my life and I'm working 60 to 70 hours a week as it is. And I don't feel I would be able to do the role justice that I would want to for the next 3 to 6 months. And I feel like that's a really busy and important time for us to be doing this. However, if there's really no one else who's willing, I would begrudgingly.
well, you can delegate heavily to whoever your vice chair is.
Well, I was gonna say I'm willing to be vice. I mean, I'm willing to be chair, but I thought since you were vice, it would be. I said to myself, I'll be chair one of, this is my last 3-year term, one of them, so it doesn't matter which of the 3 years. But I'm better this year. Last year I didn't have time. I don't have that much time this year, but it's better than last year.
So this year is just it's going to be difficult for me to do it well, but if we tag team, then that would make me feel better.
Yeah, I really love having negotiations.
Yeah.
Well, it's an
I don't-
important year is an important year.
It's an
yes.
important year and I just want to make sure that I can give it the time and attention that it's going to require, so. I mean, I will accept the nomination. Hope people vote for Marianne. So.
Would you accept vice chair?
I would absolutely accept vice
Yeah,
chair.
see, so now we're getting somewhere.
Marianne, would you accept the nomination? Sure.
I was not planning on it, but sure.
Okay.
Because I'm gonna be reading off my phone because my thing is dead.
Can we
Well,
discuss or have
discussion.
questions?
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna ask because I had kind of had something of an experience the last time I was reappointed. So I would like to hear how each of you feel about reappointing, committee members in good standing.
I'm absolutely about that. I mean, and I define good standing, that was attending meetings, so that's what I would go by, because, and it's, people have personal things going on in your life, but we don't meet that often, other than in budget season, so if you can't commit to it, maybe this isn't the board for you, but that's just my feeling.
Very similar. You are present and making the effort. I feel that about reappointing.
Mostly, I just don't want to vote for someone who's gonna not reappoint me in a year. I am up this year. And I would like.
You've demonstrated, I mean, you look at the spreadsheets and you've been chair, like, there already show commitments, so.
I had a bad experience.
I think what's gonna happen is after this year, because we're the people that decide how much free cash to use, there's a lot of pressure on all of us. And depending on how people in the community feel about the override and how much it should be, there's gonna be that much more pressure. So we all have to have steady heads about this, because it's gonna be hard.
Are there any other questions for the nominees?
So are we nominating chair and vice chair?
Just chair. We have two nominees for chair. We have two nominees for chair.
We've heard-
technically accepted, do we go?
Yeah.
So we have a race.
Let the chips fall where they.
I love
Yeah.
it.
So we gotta vote, are we?
I'm gonna call for the vote. If there are no more questions,
Just let
or deliberation.
We mess this up every year though.
I know, let the chair.
Which one do you vote for? I'm gonna do a roll call vote and you choose who you want.
Choose who you want.
Right,
Okay.
Jack will take a list.
Oh,
Okay,
Yeah, that makes sense.
so you have two nominations.
so every year we do.
We'll do it
We do
roll
it
call.
differently, that's the. There might be rules for how we do it. I don't know. This is different.
This is James.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna, next,
We have two nominations.
Yeah,
Go for it.
when we're making a meeting.
so you'll text Laura Gem again, and she'll say, yeah, this is cool.
We'll find out, maybe it'll be wrong, I don't know. All right, okay.
You need a list of finance committee members.
No, I need a motion to call.
Motion to go for the vote for the chair of finance.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote and just say who you're voting for. Which of these fine nominees will lead you into the future? Joe.
I'll go with Marianne. Thank you.
Andrew,
Marianne?
John,
Marianne.
Chris,
Appreciate, Emily, your honesty. I was probably to vote for you for chair, but it doesn't seem like I really want it this year, so I will vote
Excited to vote for Marianne.
excited.
for you.
Emily,
Marianne.
Marianne,
I guess me.
Marianne, congratulations, you have a new chair.
All right, so do we have any nominations for vice chair?
Like, vice chair.
Second. Any discussion? Emily, are you willing to serve as vice chair?
I'm willing to serve as
And
vice
to
chair.
leverage your vast experience as vice chair?
Yes. Really good at being the vice chair. Maybe, I don't know.
Can't confirm.
So, start taking notes. I will just do a conventional, we all done with discussion? Jackie? So, I will do a roll
Oh,
call.
we need a motion, I think.
All right,
Any motion for Emily to become the vice chair.
You can read off the sign.
Emily, yes.
second. Second. All right, I'll just go around the room. Joe,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
I see Joe,
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Marianne, yes. So I guess it's 9-0. 8-0. Who's ready?
Ed.
Okay.
Ed did send me his
Oh.
regards. He's traveling for work. Oh, yeah. It's what's done, done. Like, we.
Can we make up a new role, like secretary or something? Have him do all the motions. Okay. All right.
Still get to make the motion.
Yeah, so now I gotta get to the agenda. Okay, so now thank you. I guess I'm not bringing a charger. So we have voted to reorganize, and I guess we can start with liaison reports. And maybe by the end of the meeting, we can do liaison assignments. So does anyone want to volunteer a liaison? Okay, John?
So CPDC met on Monday and reorganized for the commission's chair again. Tom Armstrong is whoever they're calling the vice chair or something, not vice chair, but they were working on drafting updates to the bylaw for the ADU bylaw to come to compliance with state regulations, and that should be
On the front page of the corner.
that should be ready for fall town meeting, and also Eastern updates to the zoning bylaws for the Eastern Gateway, which are more likely to be spring.
Other liaison updates, anyone want to? I mean, I can volunteer. I watched the select board last night. We have a member here that can probably elaborate, but my conclusion, and I missed the very end of your discussion, was I don't think you guys were a unanimous endorsement for November override. There was a lot of discussion about November versus the spring. I'm not sure. Can you tell me, did you conclude anything?
We didn't. I actually thought this was going to be a second level discussion. We kept it high level purpose, so
Yeah.
this isn't really a great format to do that in. I thought it was gonna be like the last forum. So we discussed the important points, keeping it simple for the voters, because this is complex.
Oh,
And-
you stole my next update, but
Oh,
like, you'll,
sorry.
no, I'm kidding. You explain
No,
it much
that's
better.
fine. Okay, so we just talked about keeping it simple.
So it's kind of the opposite of this.
Oh, well, this is good. I mean, this is good, but
It won't
if
fit
you
on the
just,
ballot
well,
though.
this is true. This is
No.
not gonna fit in the ballot
That's
and you
not
need your
right.
glasses. But
That's not
we appreciate all of the efforts that the permutations that the town manager and our CFO have come up with, our options. And I expect you all to discuss them as well. And for instance, we thought generally three options on the ballot might be too much, and we had differing opinions of versus one or two. We discussed sort of, so that's tiered, and then we discussed also options that we have through.
That are in our memo tonight.
Okay,
Phased in.
yes, phasing it in, and we had a really deep discussion worth watching about at least three very hard years coming up, and including what people have already seen on their tax bills, are all for really good reasons, but they're not gonna be, you're gonna see significant tax increases, or we're gonna see 67 positions cut, like as identified in the red. So I think that's.
Yeah. And just the only other unrelated update, I was just checking the name. I think her name is Brenna. You guys appointed a new Board of Library Trustees member. We'll also have to have a new role to help manage the Board of Library Trustees budget. I'm sure there were other discussions, but that was the major stuff I caught. Oh, and Chief Clark is retiring, in case you hadn't remembered.
I hadn't heard that.
But he recommended Detective Amendola.
Deputy Chief.
Deputy Chief, I'm sorry, yes, as the, on the list for his replacement, and it was such an impressive list that they read about her. She's a Bronze Star winner and all these things. I think she would be the first woman chief of police in our town too. So she's just, a great person, so good luck to her.
When's that effective in retirement?
I think he said May.
That's right. Good for him.
So that's just all I have for that meeting. Oh, and I guess we have a school committee member in person here, could fill me in, see, I'm already relying on people. But when I listened to the override discussion in your school committee meeting, and Dr. Turner is here on the call also, what I got a sense from his discussion in schools is that the schools maybe do not feel like they've had enough input into this override process yet. Would you say that that's correct, Dr. Turner? If you want to speak, that we've kind of been you weren't officially superintendent yet, but then, I don't know. The discussion I heard was you all wanted to weigh in more on what the schools need. And not necessarily, for example, to conclude 100K a position like you mentioned that, and I think Tom Wise said, well, there's some people that are cheaper and some people more expensive, so it's not as simple as it was made to sound. If you guys have any input you wanna add, just about your meeting.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I'll say that, Town Manager Wellman's been extremely collaborative in, onboarding me, and we've met, prior to, my start with, Dr. Milichewski, in our finance team. As you mentioned in our school committee meeting, I stated that our team's been working at this every day since I onboarded on July 1st. We'll be working with our principals on right now in terms of planning with a presentation for our school committee. I believe that we've announced that a school committee meeting will be on Thursday, in which we'll be giving a presentation to the school committee outlining some of their questions regarding what cuts could look like in the schools on the school side if the override does not pass. I think the presentation that Town Administrator Wellman will be giving, we've been briefed on it, and as I said, it's been very collaborative, and we understand sort of the positions that are in the slide for depending on your decisions. And we'll be making some recommendations over time with the school committee and getting their feedback on it.
Yeah, that's good. And the other thing I noted that clarification, I think it was one school committee member, I think it was Aaron Gaff, pointed out how specific you have to be. And I think that also applies to the town side, that the public will respond to seeing specific things, even if they seem hard, because people can visualize the impact. And we're gonna get to it, but I'm grateful that Town Manager Wellman got very specific on this reading glasses chart. Sorry, no, that's okay. So, thank you. I think so that is, liaison reports, and now we have a reserve transfer request that I believe was related to the animal control officer. Sharon, do you want to elaborate on that?
So at the end of last fiscal year, we used to have a regional animal control officer through Wakefield, and at the end of last fiscal year, that relationship ended, and we needed to do it on our own. We'd already built the budget for fiscal 27 with $22,000 in the expense line because it was a regional situation. Now we're looking at potentially making a full-time position and moving that 22,000 to the salary line. It also got moved from the health department to the police department, but that's all part of public safety as well. But it is in the expense line right now. So what we're asking for is the equivalent of $47,000 to cover the $69,000 full-time positions. We were not getting the response for the part-time position. We entertained a lot of different options. We're looking at doing it as, a W-2 or W-9, and, unless it's full-time, I don't think we're gonna get the response for it. So we're requesting $47,000, and then at town meeting, I'll move $22,000 from that expense line up to the salary line so that we can hire a full-time animal control.
So there's 69,000 to the annual salary estimate.
It is, yeah, it's the annual salary estimate. Previously, we were in an intermunicipal agreement with Wakefield.
Yeah.
And the animal control officers at the time, when they were asked for some minor information from the new town manager there, they up and quit. And canceled the intermunicipal agreement. And so that created a lot of consternation and difficulty and so forth. So moving it to the police department, it'll be a 32-hour position. And we'll be able to do more with that position than we were able to before. So that person will be able to go into the town forest and do some educational efforts and, on our trails, regarding dogs and be a backup parking control officer, that kind
So,
of parking enforcement.
so seeing we're already into this fiscal year, when do you anticipate this hire happening?
As soon as possible.
But we'll probably, so this year, if it comes in at that amount, we'll probably be short on how much we spend this fiscal year, right? But
Yeah, we would be a
bump
little
up,
bit
but-
under that
Yeah.
annualized salary. But not by much.
Yeah, Joe, you have something in that entry?
So my question, Sharon, you mentioned moving 22,000 from expenses to salary line at town meeting. I assume the plan would be, as we usually do, to
Yeah.
the 47,000 from free cash into the FinCom reserve
Or
fund.
wherever we have, we have extra anywhere else, we won't necessarily take it from free cash, but yeah.
I remember the FY 26 budget. I'm not expecting a ton of, you to find a lot of extra.
I'm not filling the number of positions right now. We instituted a hiring freeze. There's a number of positions that will not be
It's very
filled.
likely the numbers
Just
come
so,
from
you
the
know.
budget to try to avoid free cash. Also, too, we had reworked the health insurance agreement and we had already built the budget. So there's probably some additional money in health insurance that we can, if we need to, because we built it based on what they told us it would be before we reworked the agreement. So there is some access there. So I don't anticipate using free cash. Hope.
Really, to be wrong, that's awesome.
My question of the level of service you're getting from Wakefield, was it at a full-time position or was it a part-time
It
position?
was a part-time, it was kind of almost on call sort of position, yeah, and so we were paying just sort of an on-call fee for the weekends, and it was just a really inexpensive option that we cannot recreate. Inappropriate.
And I have no idea about this line of work, but do you anticipate you getting applicants if you do a part-time position? Just out of
We
curiosity.
posted it as a part-time position. We received some, we did not feel that we had the candidate pool that we looked for. And then, we have received some other recent applications, so, since we moved it over to the police department, it's going to be, Deputy Chief Amendola in charge of that hiring. So, and she is at a prestigious, school right now for 3 weeks, working on that.
Okay, any other, Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, just the,
I didn't see you, Joe, you'll have to just raise your.
I know, I gotta do something. Is it the 69, is that fully loaded, like pension?
No, that's just the salary.
So,
But also we have extra in our benefits line. Benefits is all kinds of different benefits, pension, life insurance, health insurance, all of that's rolled into one, but benefits itself has got access within it, so.
I guess before it wasn't a benefit position, correct, like part-time?
No, it was,
It was we were invoiced.
it was like, yeah,
So it wasn't we
it's
they
a
were
99 employee. Yeah.
So like the cost is really, I don't know, what is it, like 25-35% more?
With the,
Once with like,
if you called it, yeah, probably about that, fully loaded with health insurance. I'd say about 20% for health insurance being probably.
okay, and then I know this is easier said than done, but could we go the other way and regionalize this? It sounds like there
We
is like
tried.
needs, but
We tried that.
no, but regionalize it out, not once we have a full-time position. go
No,
back
I
to
already
this
tried to
position.
regionalize it with other.
But no one else is looking for a part-time, yeah.
So some communities have regional arrangements already, but they're kind of full, or the territory is too large. Other towns weren't interested in sharing who they have right now.
But I think he was thinking, to maybe
Right.
host and have.
Yeah,
just
or
communities.
yeah, like go to Wilmington and say, well, you do.
We could, after we hire this person,
Not the direction.
for, yeah, 100%.
Thanks.
Just question, so Jen, it's a 34 position, is this non-benefited, that's not a member of the pension system, or do you offer health insurance to people being part of the hours?
They would be benefited at 32 hours. Are they benefited at the pension system?
But
They
the
have to be
pension is
at
36.
32 and a half
Oh,
hours.
sorry.
Yeah, they get 32 and a half, hours, 32,
I talked to the chief and it was 32.
but then they would not be. the pension system.
What are you doing right now about animal control? There's a.
Animal control, Corey Santasky is currently the designated animal control officer. And so police department is responding to any calls.
The last 2 fiscal years, has the police personnel line item be fully expensed, or has there always been a little bit left over at the end of fiscal years. So it could just be absorbed just through the natural fiscal 27 process.
Are you talking about the expense line then?
Personnel of this person is going to be an employee. So the last 2 fiscal years, has the police personnel line item been fully spent? Or has there been any extra left over at the end?
Oh, it's gonna be expended. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one question? You said they would serve as a backup parking enforcement? So does that require special different training than, in animal control? I mean, is
It
it?
would require some training on the, you know,
Just
the
use the
devices, yeah, that, nothing onerous at all. The animal control officer has specific required state training. So that, and they have a year, if somebody who hires somebody who doesn't have it, then they would have a year to get it. So we would hope to hire somebody who's experienced. I think.
Park cars are easier to catch.
I beg your pardon?
I said park cars are easier to catch.
Heard that. Especially if it's over 2 hours.
Police officers are covering this position.
Any further discussion?
What happened? What happened to the person?
It was 2 people, sharing one job somehow in another community. And they were asked, some innocuous question in response to can you help us get with? And they quit. They continued working for us sort of per diem, but, that arrangement did not work.
They're not interested.
They're not interested in one position. They demanded to be both hired. And so, yeah, I'd rather not go down that road. Yeah. So, their service to the town of Reading was good. They did good services, they were responsive to the town, but they were limited in what they could do. And it came up at town meeting frequently with, you know, enforcement of leash laws and so forth, and, you know, how many dogs in town forest, that those conversations, we were never able to adequately manage that.
Anything else? So do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the $47,000 transfer from FinCom reserves for the role of animal control officer.
That's not true.
No questions? Okay, I guess we're all here and no one's online, so we could just do a show of hands. All in favor? Okay, all opposed? Nobody? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the star of the show here, I guess, or maybe there's 2 stars of the show. Discuss override options and vote on recommended override amounts, but seems what goes hand in hand with it would be discussion on budget cuts and free cash usage. And I think in the packet, the town manager has some parts of this she would like to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm going to read into the record and for the public benefit, the memo that I've sent tonight to all of our boards, committees, and commissions in your FinCom packet regarding this. I think this lays out where we're at right now. It's clarity. Can you read that? That's perfect. It's Latin. Very sorry. She put, yeah, she's gonna put that. I was like, okay. Thank you. So Reading faces a significant and escalating structural deficit, $6.47 million in FY 27, rising to 9.8 in FY 28, and reaching 11.4 million in by FY 32. The proposed FY 28 operating budget assumes the passage of a Proposition 2.5 override to maintain stable services and avoid severe reductions. Without an override, the town would need to revise the FY 28 budget, implement broad service cuts beginning in FY 28, and make substantial deeper reductions in FY 29 to achieve a balanced budget. The deficit has been driven by years of increasing reliance on free cash, stagnant departmental budgets, and substantial post-pandemic cost inflation across labor contracts, utilities, waste management, health insurance, and other core expenses. Free cash regeneration has now inverted, leaving the town unable to rely on reserves without jeopardizing its long-term financial stability and bond rating. To address FY 28 needs, I'm asking or recommending the $6.5 million override supplemented by $3 million in free cash tied directly to the capital plan. If the override fails, approximately 67 municipal and school positions would be eliminated. Capital investments, including an ambulance purchase, would be deferred, and major service reductions would affect every department. The library would lose Sunday hours and face staffing reductions severe enough to almost certainly risk state decertification, resulting in the loss of aid, grants, and interlibrary borrowing privileges. The choices ahead will shape Reading's fiscal health and service levels for years. Clear understanding and thoughtful engagement across boards, committees, staff, and residents are essential as the community considers how best to preserve the high-quality services and financial stability it values. So this memo accompanies the FY28 budget presentation and outlines the significance of a Proposition 2.5 override request. The proposed FY budget assumes the override's successful passage, allowing Reading's operating budget to grow at a modest and sustainable rate. If the override fails, the budget must be revised and resubmitted to governing bodies and ultimately approved by town meeting before July 1, 2027. Our current fiscal picture, Reading faces a substantial and growing structural deficit. For FY27, the deficit is $6.475 million, increasing to $9.8 million in FY28 and continuing to escalate through FY29 and FY30. By FY32, our projections indicate that the deficit will reach $11.4 million. To remain within current appropriations, I am instituting a hiring freeze immediately, prioritizing public safety and essential services. This year will represent a more austere budget environment than FY26. Should the override not pass, service reductions will begin in FY28 and intensify significantly in FY29 to meet those required cuts. Nearly all municipal departments and the Reading Public Schools will face reductions in staffing and services. So why do we face a structural deficit? Over several years, Reading has increasingly relied on free cash to balance the operating budget. Although the town's last override in 2018 was modest at $4.15 million, smaller than the $4.5 million override 15 years earlier, it lasted almost 9 years due to strong reserves and temporary pandemic-related funding with CARES Act and ARPA. However, that longevity came at a cost. Department budgets have been essentially level funded for multiple years and cannot keep pace with post-pandemic inflation. Rising costs affect all labor contracts, utilities, fuel, waste disposal, with our new recycling trash collection contract, 39.5% increase, employee health insurance, and more. An additional item I'm adding here, ad-libbing, is the state has terribly underfunded municipalities in multiple ways since the Great Recession. It hasn't adequately recovered when you account for inflation. So what's free cash? Everybody in this room knows what free cash is. People at home may not know what free cash is. And free cash is a terrible term, but it's part of our reserves. Free cash is certified annually by the Department of Revenue and includes unspent departmental funds, interest income, and local receipts. Most of our reserves reside in free cash, along with the town's $2 million stabilization fund. Free cash can be appropriated with a simple majority vote at town meeting, whereas stabilization fund reserves require a 2/3 vote, an important distinction in planning budget solutions. Beginning in 2023, Reading's ability to regenerate free cash reversed. The town now regenerates less free cash annually than it uses to balance the budget. This is unsustainable and risks depleted reserve, a downgraded bond rating, and higher borrowing costs if not addressed. Path forward. To restore fiscal balance, I propose tying any use of free cash directly to the capital budget, consistent with Reading's long-established policy of investing 5% of the operating budget annually in capital and debt service. In FY27, we reduced capital and debt to 4.5%. Funding agencies have consistently recognized this disciplined approach as a strength, helping Reading maintain healthy infrastructure and stable financial standing. However, excessive reliance on free cash has disrupted that balance, necessitating structural correction. For FY28, with an anticipated structural deficit of roughly $10 million, I'm asking the Select Board and the Finance Committee and the community to consider a $6.5 million override, paired with $3 million in free cash and additional savings achieved through attrition and organizational restructuring. Without the override, cuts to staffing, services, and capital would be significant. Current estimates show approximately 67 positions across municipal and school departments would need to be eliminated. This number would increase if free cash were not used to support the capital plan. Projects funded through prior debt exclusions, including the Killen Elementary School and recount, will not be affected by an unsuccessful override if they were approved previously by voters. Anticipated impacts of a failed override. Service reductions would be widespread, including, beginning in FY '28, accelerating sharply in FY '29. Major departments, police, fire, public works, schools, and the library would experience the largest cuts due to the scale of their budgets. Smaller departments such as community development, building, finance, health, town's clerk's office would also face reductions in staffing and hours. Townwide operational functions, including human resources, legal, information technology, and facilities, would see decreased training, weakened cybersecurity efforts, delayed maintenance, and reduced custodial services. Capital expenditures would be reduced further, including deferral of nearly $1 million in planned FY '27 capital projects, and ambulance purchase and associated equipment would be postponed as part of that. The library would also close on Sundays and face staffing cuts severe enough to jeopardize its certification. Notably, we only have to cut a little more than $26,000 in staffing from the library to risk their decertification because their budget is so narrow. Losing certification would end state aid, eliminate access to grants, and prevent borrowing from neighboring libraries such as Wakefield, Stone, and Melville, Smithfield, and Burlington. Over time, municipal service levels would necessarily contract to core functions, resulting in diminished community engagement activities and a reduced quality of non-essential services. So in closing, Reading stands at a critical juncture. These decisions ahead will determine our ability to maintain valued services, protect financial stability, and preserve the community character residents expect. My commitment is to continue providing transparent, data-driven analysis and to work collaboratively across all boards, committees, and staff. I urge all stakeholders to engage thoughtfully in the work ahead as we make choices that will shape Reading's future for years to come. So that is my opening.
Right from TSA.
And we can move, do you want to move into this chart?
Yeah.
Let's move into the chart.
Yes, good.
Well, it speaks,
You gotta put that up.
the trails coming in.
It's like.
A little.
Give it a little. Okay.
Put the garbage in.
Problem.
It's not full. There we go. Even better, even nailed it. Okay, so the purpose of this chart, as we added things to it, the fonts necessarily got smaller and smaller. So we should have probably printed this on 11 by 14. But I want to take folks through kind of what happens if we don't pass an override. So previously, and I even said it last night at the select board meeting, we were looking at 74 positions. When Sharon and I sat down and talked about it again, I cut more capital in a no override budget. So it was like 3.989 and brought that budget down to $3 million. And so that is to save more positions in town. And so that's what we did. Now, it's also important to know that these numbers are fully loaded. This is an estimate. So it's the equivalent of 67 positions. What does that mean? We have done an estimate and we worked with the school department staff, and Dr. Turner can validate this. That an average salary is about $85,000, 15,000 in benefits. And then what was it that you held for unemployment? 33,000 per position. 33,000. Okay. So these numbers are fully loaded. When you have to pay unemployment, you have to lay off more people to pay for it, which is terrible. But that's how the math works. So unfortunately, if we have to come to this action, the specific numbers, the specific positions change what that number looks like. But this is to give folks an understanding of the scale that we're looking at. Under this no override scenario we presented to you, it is our hope that the finance committee would recommend $3 million in free cash of what we have left to we would not recommend any more than 3 million because that would be tied to the capital budget. And if we did that, then we would be at that 67 positions. If we were to not use any free cash or less, that number would only rise. In administrative services, we would be cutting the boards and committee funding back to $20,000, where it is now. In community services, elder and human services programming would remain at 13,000. Elder and human services meals would be at 15,000. We would not hire a therapeutic rec instructor, and we would eliminate the volunteer coordinator position. In DPW, we would cut weekly recycling to bi-weekly. Notably, it's also going to be bi-weekly in the $6.5 million. We will cut parks improvements, that's in the capital plan. We will cut fence improvements, capital plan. We will eliminate the assistant town engineer position. It's currently vacant. I'm holding it vacant. And we'll remove trash bins from parks and fields. That would save us a seat. Under facilities, we will cut 1 new maintenance staff member and 1 custodian for our new building. In the fire department, we will cut an ambulance purchase and associated equipment and a simulation mannequin. These are in the capital budget. Under health, we will reduce rodent mitigation $30,000. In the library, we will cut Sunday hours, jeopardizing certification. The police department, we will cut overtime $200,000. We will cut 1 cruiser. As you know, we usually replace 2 cruisers annually, set to 1, and reduce the crossing guards budget by $20,000. In the school department, they have a $917,000 community priority that's built into the $6.5 million level 2 budget. That brings the school department budget to a 5.25% budget. If there is no override, they would lose that. And then the school department budget would only grow by 7.5, plus all the cuts that we have. And then the technology, we would cut Microsoft licenses, we would cut wireless devices, and we would cut IT support for our night meetings and evening support. So if the $6.5 million override were to pass, this is a partial restoration of services. I would still reduce positions on the town side, 3 to 5 positions on the town side. We would still need to use $3 to $3.3 million of free cash to augment that budget. But then again, that would be tied to your capital plan. And we would maintain services across the town. We would restore the board and committee funding to $25,000. We would increase elder and human services programs to $43,000. We would increase the meals to $25,000. We would hire a part-time therapeutic rec instructor for $33,000. And we would restore the volunteer coordinator position. DPW would continue to have recycling and bi-weekly. This is worth $400,000. We would restore the parks improvements, the fence improvements, the assistant town engineer position could be filled, and we would restore trash bins, parks and fields. In facilities, we would hire two new maintenance staff and 2 new custodians to staff the buildings and manage all that square footage, well over 1 million square feet. Yeah, they're over 1 million now. We will restore the ambulance and associated equipment purchases and simulation mannequin. Restore road mitigation to $50,000. Library will stay open on Sundays and maintain its certification. The police department will restore the overtime, will restore their 2nd cruiser, and their crossing guards will stay at $20,000. The schools will have their community priority in the budget so that their budget will be 5.25% increase. And then in technology, we will restore Microsoft licenses, restore wireless devices, restore some support for 90. Now, we went through an exercise to see what would it take to eliminate the structural deficit and restore financial health. And so that number is $11 million. And the way we get there is we add, in this budget here, we add $1.2 million in services that were requested that I did not bill in the level 2 budget. And we reduce the free cash that would be used. So that brings us to $11 million. So there would be no cuts to services, expenses, or personnel. There would be no free cash usage in the first year following the override. We would maintain services across the town and we preserve financial health and AAA bond rating. Community services, I would increase some programming there and their meals. And we would hire a full-time therapeutic recreation instructor. For DPW, we would restore weekly recycling and hire 2 laborers. DPW has requested some laborers to help with highway, which will help with plowing, snow removal, and all of the work that highway does throughout the year, and also people who will be working on the buildings in and around the new building. And the fire department has requested 4 new firefighters, which will help decrease overtime, and the police department, I would hire 3 new police officers, which again would help decrease our overtime. And those would probably be on at night, according to the chief. So these are examples of how we would get to $11 million. This, we can reduce that. But the most important thing is to have the override last us to FY32. That's the goal. It is to reduce a reliance on free cash usage to supplement the operating budget. Again, I am proposing that we have a policy that we do not exceed the capital budget with our free cash support in the budget, so that they are tied one-time monies to one-time expenditures. And when in the future boards and the town understands that the numbers getting too high, we understand that that's a signal. Some changes. Questions?
Joe? So just to be completely obtuse, green is yellow plus, right?
Correct. Everything is, yeah, exactly.
And so I guess a couple of specific questions. What does it look like without OT for the police? I know that's been a major issue, not major issue, they've had a lot of OT the past couple of years for a variety of reasons. If there's no OT in the budget and we get to, month 11, 10, 11, and there's no OT time left, is there just no service, like it just?
So I had this conversation with the chief, with all of the department heads, but particularly with the ones who are experiencing. And so unlike the snow and ice, budget where you can go over, like as we did this year. I have said it's July. You need to manage your overtime now, because this is the austere year, FY27. FY28, if there's no override, would be worse. But I've said, I don't want you to have an ethic of, we're gonna go back to finance committee and ask for this. We're gonna go to town meeting and ask for this. If that means you have to pull people off the road, you have to pull people off the road. It means reduced training. It means, stacking calls. They're already stacking calls. They will continue to stack calls. So it will be a reduction in the level of service that people are accustomed to. It's interesting to note that the police department hasn't had a staffing study done since before Jordan's Furniture was built. They're doing that work now. Yeah, no, I said, wow, maybe we should do that now. But you can't hire a consultant to do it, so figure it out. And they are working on that, but we have more people that live in the community. We have a lot more traffic accidents in the community than were prior to Jordan's Furniture being built. It's not related to that, but there's just a lot more calls for service. And so if we're taking cars off the road, that's going to have an impact. So the 3 officers here, when I spoke with the police chief about this, and again, it's a proposal, it's not a requirement. He would put them on the night shift, because during the day we have detectives that are in the building that can jump in and do more day officers. So at night you don't have that. So does that answer?
It does. And then I know you said 67 positions is kind of a placeholder, just
It is.
approximate. Do you have a sense of, would the basically schools just be hit for that community priority volume, like whatever, 970?
917, yeah.
And so would we expect there to be additional cuts on top of that 917 school side? Or is that just kind of?
It would be the 917 plus the positions.
Plus
the addition-
positions.
Plus positions,
Understood.
yeah, plus positions.
Okay.
So, yeah, and we have a little bit more detail about that in Sharon's presentation.
Okay.
We'll get to.
Joe, or do
Go
you
ahead,
wanna know?
Jack. Well, I mean, so I was gonna ask about, I mean, along lines of understanding what having versus cutting the community priority means. So obviously, if it's, you know, $100,000 a position approximately, that's 9 positions approximately. But then that's 9 plus 67 or whatever. And-
You chase that number.
Yes, yeah, that's so you're looking at, parents of kids in the schools are of course gonna be concerned about that number in particular. But,
That's a shared number, just so we're
Yeah.
very clear.
yeah,
It is a shared number. We have not decided on an apportionment or
Yeah.
how that would be determined between the towns. We'll have a little bit of a conversation about that later. Yes.
I'm not asking you what are the 3 to 5 positions town side on $6.5 million
Thank you.
scenario.
I appreciate that.
I wrote it down, I didn't ask you. So, yeah, but I wonder if there could like, I mean, I don't know if this is a Sharon question, a Bill question, a Dr. Turner question, but like, what exactly does the 917 community priority mean?
I'm gonna ask Sharon to explain that.
That I'll try to jump in. So when we met with the school department trying to determine what this budget would look like, we asked them, do you have anything that you need to add, or what does that budget need to look like? They gave us a 5.25% budget just for level services, not adding any positions or anything like that. So I had planned on a 3.75, so in order to get them there, the difference between a 5.25% budget and a 3.75% budget is that $917,000. So it's not adding anything, it's just trying to keep maintaining what they're doing. They don't have new teachers or anything in that number, and so they would need to cut if we didn't get that right, because that 917 can't be afforded, because we need to possibly.
So there's no, it's not tied to, it's just their regular
And they
operating.
gave us kind of some of the background, they were estimating 3% COLA across the board. And then 6% for paras, our paras are very much underpaid. And so they planned on, so there's some estimates that might need to change in terms of what they do for COLAs, but that's what they came to the table with, kind of just, bottom up, figuring out what I have right now. If we did a 3% COLA and steps and all the stuff we normally do, what would it really cost us? And that's what they came back with. Joe?
It's more just, like, as this is circulated and you build this out, like, to me, it might help, like, for people that aren't close to it, like, what's EHS, right? Like,
Sure, yeah.
Then that point, you explain about.
Another
community
human
priority.
services, yeah,
Like,
it's
you know,
the
you
acronym.
Yeah, just know, like, anytime you have like the acronyms, but like the 917, trying to figure out a way to put that in a couple of words, because like that.
I feel like the fact that something is a community priority versus the school department budget, just what, again, that's kind of an implementation detail.
Well,
so,
it's just
yeah.
in general,
I-
we tend to have the same operating budget, so to give the school something more than the town is getting, that's
Yeah,
where that.
it's just how it's like-
Yeah.
No, that's good
And
feedback.
I
We can.
don't think people care.
We'll just say it's a $917 cut to the school department.
And the other thing too is like full disclosure, like we're cutting the purchase of a new ambulance and a new cruiser, correct? We're not taking one off the road.
We're deferring the purchase of what we would need.
Yeah, so I think it'd be good to, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't help sell it as much, but it'd be just to
No,
be
that's
really
fair.
clear.
We want to be
So,
very clear and fair on what we're doing, because this is what I promise you. If I say I'm gonna cut it, I'm gonna cut it.
Yeah.
This is not a tactic, it's not a game. Whenever I've come before town meeting or any boards in the town, if I promise you something, I will keep my word. And if I say I'm going to restore it, I will restore it. Depending on what town meeting and the voters group, but that is my promise. We have been asked to be transparent, I will be transparent. My ethics and my word are very important to me. And, you know, I take it very personally, so I will be honest and as forthright and transparent with everybody as I can. And I know Sharon feels the same way.
I wanted to add something in general. That 5.25 was built with expectation of a certain level of full step. None of these unions have contracts for fiscal 28, so there's some flexibility there. So, you know what I mean, they're probably building it what they'd ideally like to see. And if there's no override, that would be very different, I would guess.
Well, I think the school department's number of 3% COLA is
What they're saying.
austere in
Yeah,
the
that's
school
not
department world.
extravagant, that's
It is not extravagant. And, you know,
But in a no override scenario, they might do something different.
correct. So, yeah, and the school committee is responsible for their collective bargaining, and we are also in all of our unions.
And just one other thing,
That's okay, Joe, you finish and then Mark.
It's really back to your memo, which I do like, Jane, but just the part about the debt exclusions, like technically, the operating costs would be impacted if we didn't have COVID.
Yes, you're correct. The operating costs.
It's just the way it's like worded, it sounds like it's.
That's helpful. I appreciate that. That's
I
really
think it's
helpful.
important to note that those costs, because the buildings are gonna be there, we have to build in a full year of cost related to utilities, insurance, all those things. And that's a full year, even if they're not gonna be there the full year, just to bring up the baseline. So I think fiscal 28. Are you saying?
No, you're right, but I think the point that he's making is I can close recount for the weekend and I can shorten the hours. So, and I will, because if I can only hire one custodian to service that building. Right now, the Pleasant Street Center and Town Hall are serviced by one custodian, and the police department and the fire department is one custodian between the buildings. Okay, so we need to hire more custodians just to manage that building.
But the meaning behind your comments was more that it's not going to stop the buildings from proceeding and those expenses have to stay there. Because the
Right.
buildings have been.
And particularly it's the debt exclusion. We have to run those buildings. Reduce costs.
It could be definitely reduced hours, I would say for sure.
If we have to close the library on Sunday, we'll be closing the account for weekends.
And I just wanna like, I'm not sure if this gets too wordy, but on the memo, talking about the cost, put like numbers on it. Like you reference all these different costs that are going up. But remind people, like, you know, you have 2.5% and don't assume people know that. But you mentioned why we face structural.
Why we face it.
Rising costs affect labor contracts, utilities, fuel.
Yeah.
Like you gave the example of waste disposal.
Yeah.
But throw in some of the other ones, because there's big numbers there that are far exceeded, you know, the
The slide shows you probably what I have on my structural.
Yeah, some of the others,
slides,
that's
will
stuff
help
is-
us put those things in perspective and happened.
That's excellent feedback, thank you.
I know you're trying to balance, like, so it's not a book, but it's.
Trying to
No,
make
Let's
it
sell it.
quick information.
No, I'm grateful for your feedback, thank you. I will do this.
Mark and
Second.
I'm sorry.
I think Tom Weiss had his hand up.
Yeah, I figured we'd just go through the FinCom questions
Okay.
first and then go to the other boards. I did, you know. I had a question, but I want to make sure my other members had. Mark, you had something. I
Yeah,
think
so
Joe
I've got a few questions. The stabilization fund, should we be proposing using some of those funds?
I would not recommend doing that. We should be putting more money in this.
What is the purpose of the stabilization fund?
It's part of your reserves.
What would we use the stabilization?
So in some communities, they take their free cash certification at the end. Well, they go to their town meeting, they appropriate money for their capital. And then they put the rest of the free cash into stabilization, because it's harder to spend. It's harder to spend it, because you need a 2/3 majority at town meeting. And so it reserves it, it's a protective reserve. You have to convince more people at town meeting that you need whatever it is you want to spend. So right now, we only have $2 million in stabilization. So your reserves, and we'll talk more about this later, are dropping significantly. A few years ago, we had $19 million in reserves, and that seemed like this is not a good time to go to the public and ask for an override, because the reserves are heavy between free cash and between stabilization. But now, that number is, and Sharon will take us through it later, is almost where what we have left is about what we would need to fill it. And then it's gone.
So the stabilization fund will really be used after free cash is gone, is that? Just trying to understand, like, when would you use?
I
Yeah,
would, that
It's, it's basically a savings account that you never touch is what I would call it. It's part of our reserves and where we're right now with the estimates I put in place for what I think free cash might regenerate this year. We're about 12% of our net available revenues. AAA bond rating requires a 15 to 20, so we're below where we should be. So any use of free cash in the fiscal 28 budget, the recommendation would be to keep it low, 3 billion or less, because I know I can regenerate more than 3 million usually in any given year. And it would be connected to capital spend, which is one time. I think the thing that makes our budget different than a lot of other communities, the fact that discipline of that 5% of debt and capital is built into our budget. And a lot of communities, they use their free cash to pay for capital. So we've always used a small amount, $1.5 to $2 million. And it was never the full amount of the capital, but having it would make sense, and having it tied to our capital spend would make it more of a one-time use kind of scenario instead of supplementing our operating budget, which is unsustainable. So that was kind of the thing, because right now it looks like where free cash would be estimated somewhere around $13.6 million. If you use 6.475, using half of your free cash, that's not a good level. I would never recommend half. I mean, this year we essentially used half of our reserves. We're at 17.3 and we spent like $8.6 million. So essentially, that is not something we would have done on the onset. Like, we never chose to do that, but free cash needed to be used for other things, snow and ice, other things that were less than ideal. That's where the situation becomes bad, is that we're using way more than we should, and then something comes up that you have to put money out, like the snow and ice, that was like $1 million over.
If you were to spend down your free cash and all you have left is stabilization, and then you have bad snow and ice here, you only have $2 million. You know, if you lose a lawsuit, you know.
So it's the ultimate emergency fund.
It's your emergency
Really, really, like, if we have nothing else,
Whoa.
if the fire department blows up or something.
It's way below.
I mean, ideally, if it was me, I'd probably want to see the stabilization fund over 15%, and anything extra would be in free cash. Do you know what I mean? Like, or at least 10% or some other number, because that's the number we're really driving for, because our AAA bond rating is at risk. At the very least, the 7% that you require should be in there. Do you know what I mean? So that you can see the distinction of, we require 7% minimum. So if that 7% was in the stabilization fund, that balance of free cash would look a lot smaller and a lot more manageable for people to understand. When you see a huge number like $90 million in there, people think you're flush with cash.
Right, it sends, well, and it sends a wrong message to lots of different things, so. It's good to have reserves, it's good to have healthy,
But we've spent
strong
down
reserves.
a lot of these reserves to get us through this rough patch, but we have to reel it in, I think.
I got a couple. So the school's killing is coming in under. So
Yes.
is there a way that you're gonna communicate sort of that amount of debt's gonna be less than right there won't, like, are you tying it all?
There definitely will be, what we borrowed, probably roughly more than, probably like 60% for each project. So we borrowed 50 million for Calvin. We were supposed to be borrowing 86, our share was 86, where it's coming in so much lower. My anticipation would be that second borrowing would be a lot less than we had planned. But until I see a cash flow of how everything's gonna bring up, I don't know exact numbers at this point. I just know that things come in tremendously lower, and that would definitely help that second tranche to be much smaller. And I think that the money that we did borrow will last us longer. The cash projections that we had, we borrowed enough to get us through June of 2027. The numbers are coming in so much lower, I would think it would bring us further into fiscal 28, further, so that we wouldn't have a debt payment at all until 29. Second tranche of debt, plus that second tranche of debt will be smaller. So there's definitely things that are working in our favor in some ways, but I don't have exact numbers at this point.
But we will communicate that.
We will communicate it once I've requested an updated cash flow, and I'll be asking for one monthly as the project starts to proceed.
So we accruing interest on the money we've drawn down already?
So we invest the money that we've drawn, that the money that we we borrowed, we've been investing and maximizing investment earnings, which we're allowed to do as long as we stay within our spending. We have to spend like 10% within like 6 months, whatever. So you really have to be careful when you borrow, because if you don't make that spending timeline, you have to pay arbitrage, which is the difference between your interest rate and what you're earning money right now. We don't want to pay that much back. We're allowed to keep that interest if we stay within our spending threshold, which we are. But the reason we borrowed a little bit more than I had planned was because I knew the override was gonna have to be fiscal 28. All signs last year were pointing that it was gonna be 28, and we ended up trying to borrow enough to keep us longer. So that if I can get that borrowing to happen somewhere in the middle of fiscal 28, I won't even have an interest rate. Do you know what I mean? So it just depends on that cash flow, exactly when I would borrow. And I do anticipate that that second borrowing will be much smaller than just hit their tax bill.
So, but there will be a positive, impact to people's tax bills. So when they
Sure.
see an override, they'll also see or somehow communicate that you won't have as much payments.
We will definitely have something on there. I just don't know about the exact numbers of what that impact will be, because I won't know exactly what.
Your tax bill will still go up in FY29, but it would go up by less than the calculator on the calculator site that we used to have.
Yeah.
Maybe it's still there.
It's still there.
Okay.
Yep.
Says, so that's it is tricky to communicate about this because you're communicating like, this is it winning against the counterfactual. It is still, many people, like at our last meeting, or in fact, communicate the whole thing, make sure you're not. I don't take kindly to the suggestion that we're not communicating the whole thing, setting that aside.
It's a lot of information.
As we communicate the whole thing, yes, we
I
need to
think we
make.
meant stack up all the amounts,
Right,
like, don't
right,
just say,
right.
oh, it's only going up by 800 because the override, it's like, no, what about Killam?
Right, yeah, exactly,
CPA,
yes.
this.
And the net effect of that savings is that stack is smaller. than
John
it would
Arena
be.
had mentioned, why aren't you showing me fiscal 27? Well, I can't show you fiscal 27. Tax rate hasn't been set for fiscal 27. So when the bills go out for fiscal 27, those first 2 quarters, they go out with fiscal 26 tax rate until I set the tax rate in November. So I can't give you what the tax rate's gonna be. And right now we're doing a reval year, which is done every 5 years. It even makes it harder for the assessor to even give me an idea of where we're going to land. So it's really not ideal for me to try and estimate it. So the best we can do is use the fiscal 26 and average value for a home and the average tax bill, and then tell you what that impact is for that first tranche of debt.
And we have some
And
information.
it's all in the slides when we get to it.
Yeah.
And Joe, did you have something? And Arnie?
I'm the answer.
All right, so I had I know, oh, go ahead, John. Or Andrew, Andrew, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So my question is, event receipts. Okay, I know that we get some money from IMD. Last time we did that, we did an agreement with them. When is that up? Do you remember?
It's a while.
Or what is the, like, I think it was for a few
I
years.
feel like the way it worked out, though, I feel like the money that they're turning over is less than a year. So because it's done on like a 3-year kilowatt hour sold,
Right.
it's really not working out to be as beneficial as our prior arrangement, which was based on the CPI index. And so what I'm seeing is that I'm actually getting less money each year instead of an increase of some
So
percent.
take it up to
Years
CPI
for that,
specifically.
for that agreement, was it for 10 years?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was negotiated back when Dan Ensminger was still on the select board, so it was like
Just
2000,
resigned.
so you just re-signed it now,
Couple of years
but it
ago, yeah.
didn't change?
No, we changed it,
I know,
so
it
it
was
is
big
going down a
discussion.
little bit, I thought it would go up more, they're not selling as many kilowatts. When they sell more kilowatts, when we convert to electric, maybe these on buildings come online and but she's right. It's not gone down a lot, but it has gone down a little bit because they're not selling more kilowatts. It's not significant, maybe $20,000 reduction each year of what I'm getting out of the.
So during COVID, interestingly enough,
We're not, we were all at home, we're all using power in the district, and then when people went back to work.
Sounds like we need a data
Hindsight.
center in Reading, huh?
As far as that isn't increasing, it's actually declining, but it's not helping our budget, it's
Yeah. So that's
dragging.
another-
So, and then receipts from growth, is there movement there at all?
New growth?
Yeah, new growth.
New growth, like I have not, I feel like it's been declining and just kind of stabilizing. I'm not as actively engaged in what's coming in. I don't know if you can speak to it, but I do know that we haven't seen anything that's gonna really move the needle significantly.
We have
From my conversations with the accessories, like nothing that's gonna move the needle any.
There's some projects that are coming online, there'll be, some new growth numbers, there's some exciting things happening. But they haven't pulled permits yet, so I can't speak to it. We don't know when those valuations will be. Eastern Gateway, that project, rezoning that area and planning for redeveloping there, that's gonna be the new growth engine. So the 40R Smart District in downtown was part of what helped extend that 2018 override. That work that they did created new growth opportunities. Eastern Gateway is your opportunity to extend. And that's a longitudinal, look, that's a strategic investment that we all need to talk about, rezoning that. And I think, Mary, you've talked about that work with the downtown.
Yeah, I think I remember Bob Electra said in 1 year, we had 1 million in new growth, and right when the stuff was peaking.
Yeah.
That it was all,
Just like 1.6, I think, and then it just started to fall.
right, and now the projects I've seen looking at CPDC that are coming on. I mean, okay, like thing next to Bagel World or next to Perfectos, I mean, it's gonna be. Once, if it gets past what, like 20 apartments or something, condos get assessed more than apartments. It would be nice if we had more condos, because those really help us. I don't know why they're the same thing with the same number of units, it's assessed them so completely differently, but like, they were like 4 or 5 in 1 year with the downtown, and now it's just like maybe 1 a year, so it's much smaller. John?
There were no new applications that actually changed the downtown zoning laws.
But also, what's left in downtown to redevelop? I mean, they've done a lot.
No, they changed the zoning of the smart growth districts.
Yeah.
What's more to they require more parking, I think.
Yeah.
According to any new applications.
And so I just have a couple of questions and then I want to go. I know Tom Weiss has had his hand raised.
I think his hand is raised.
Oh, all right. Well, I don't know.
He might still.
I can go. I messaged him that I would call on him. So is everyone in FinCom got their questions? So one of my questions is, I don't understand, and maybe we can't do this without the library director here, why we need Sunday hours to maintain certification. Is it just to meet a weekly hours? Because there's a lot of other libraries that aren't open on Sundays.
No, it's not just that. It's, if we close the Sunday hours, that does not risk our, it makes it at risk, but that's not what's really the driver. It's about to do layoffs. Because we are required, there's a formula, with the,
Yes,
hold on, I'll get
yeah,
there
no,
really.
someone was sharing that. I had access to it, and I think that we have comparable number of FTEs to some of our neighboring towns, something like 25 FTEs in our library. And I didn't really see where we were lacking. I thought we were high compared to neighboring community, like compared to Wakefield and Melrose.
The formula is not just, it's not the same from town to town.
I guess I was going
Percentage
FTEs per
of where-
population, okay.
No, that may be part of it, but it's a formula. I don't know the details of the formula. I did discuss that with Amy, but so she says if at level 2, if RPL is at 3%, they're okay. If there's no override, in the best case, they could cut no more than $29,050 from level 2. So that'd be Sundays and some other expenses. They can maintain their certification. If the cuts are over $30,000, between salaries or expense, any combination of them, I think there's losing the certification. So that's part of that.
The salary.
Yeah, it's that local appropriation, that formula. If you don't need that, that's what they need to certify.
Okay, and so are these positions that have to be like official library positions? Because
It has to be out of the library department budget.
okay, so out of the budget, not necessarily librarian, because I don't want to get into the debate about how they have to director of equity, I'm never gonna get his title right, but I know he's also our disability director now
That's
too.
correct.
So I didn't know if we fully moved him to one town side or something, if that changes anything.
He's
He's not
currently
really
in
in library,
Yeah,
he's in the library, but he isn't doing library functions, right?
right, yeah, I don't
Can't
know,
imagine he's probably.
I don't.
I just didn't know if consolidating him to the town side changes anything with the library budget and helps it.
We can run that map.
If it's net the same amount, it just doesn't impact it. We still have him, we still have what he does, just not on. My other questions were just maybe minor things, but I guess just back to the library. As a town manager, I know the Board of Library Trustees controls a lot of aspects of the library. What role do you can just tell the library at a high level, we're doing 10% across the board cuts or something like that, that's what you can do, like what oversight role do you have on the library budget? Because I know they're a separate board that oversees that.
They have special funds that they control, but if we have to do reduction force.
Okay, so, yeah, because they do have, they have a lot of trustee funds and.
They do, they have some donor funds.
That can get them through something like this.
Yeah.
I guess another quick question, just on the police overtime, are we now charging for police details for special functions already? Okay.
Yeah, we started that this spring.
And,
And, it's disappointing to have to tell people that, it's not a fun thing to tell people, but we're being equitable, everybody has to do it. And, we want, and, we're not gonna make you have a detail, you don't need one either, we want it.
but if you're drawing crowds, requiring the street to be closed, I guess. I remember this more in another detail we got in the financial forum about, this just called it cutting Microsoft licenses, and I think, wasn't it co-pilot licenses, and you were going from 100 to 50? I'm just curious, how many town employees are now using it? And I don't know if you get into, Joe will correct me on my terminology about how many tokens the town is using with billing, like
If we get too specific about that stuff, I should accuse myself.
No, I just mean like, I'm just saying, are we expending a lot on that right now, and do we anticipate
So-
spending a lot, is that kind of place leveraging that?
We have some employees that have G3 licenses, and we have some employees that have G1 licenses. And we want to move more people to G3 licenses. And I mean, and so that's what part of what he wants to do. And then he asked for 100 co-pilot licenses at related cost. We're currently in the process of developing an AI acceptable use policy. And so we have a committee that started that work and how we use this ethically as a town, as staff. So, because we have staff doing, AI on ChatGPT or AI over here, so we're like, we're not gonna do that anymore.
No, I mean, we have an enterprise, you protect your confidentiality. I just didn't know if this was a balance, if we think we're gonna save money with these licenses, or whether this is just we're in the experimental stage.
We're gonna save money by not distributing the 55 G3 licenses that he's asked for, and the 100 co-pilot licenses. But we do need to distribute more of those licenses, so we have some people doing this work that needs to be done. But it's really to avoid cutting things that are security, our SCADA that holds up our, our infrastructure, our cybersecurity, licenses. We carry a lot of that. Kevin's and he's like, you can touch these things. Please don't touch these other things. These are the ones I really can't have you touch. And I'm like, okay, so.
It's just my only final point is, and I think this was alluded to in the select board meeting last night, most people open up their real estate tax bill and saw 10% increase. And people are gonna wanna know, well, you're getting 10% more from me. Where is that going and why isn't it enough? So if it's the first part of the kill and recall, say, look, of your 10% increase, 80% is going to that, the other 20% is health insurance. Maybe it doesn't have to be exactly 2.5%. Yeah, but people saw that, and then to hear about an override on top, they wanna know, but why isn't that extra money?
I understand.
Being very clear, what is driving it, what's in it. And the other thing that makes it confusing is the fact that in fiscal 26 was the first year that all the debt exclusions had fallen off, so fiscal 26 was extremely bad back, they could even have saw a slight reduction. You know, and then now they're going to have the first, you know, tranche of excluded debt hitting. It's about $568 for the average home. And their home is appreciated, so you're gonna have that 2.5%, and if your home is appreciating faster than other homes, you actually see more than 2.5%. I think people think that my taxes can't go up more than 2.5%, but they can. The levy can only go up 2.5%, and your proportionate share of the overall value of all the property in Reading is based on what your property is worth and what all the properties worth. So it's like a percent. of
Right,
the-
I guess it's just a lot.
So people don't,
It is,
but what I
hard to wait to say, wait, my taxes are gonna be 20% more after this override. and-
oh, it's hard. I mean, the other thing I'm noticing is that Reading's property appreciates extraordinarily fast. The last time we talked about property values, the average property was $890, and now it's like $950, and it's like, that was like a year ago. So it's like crazy to me how fast that the value of the property is going.
The residential property. but because the
Residential,
business
the commercials don't go as
is-
fast.
Yeah, and therefore we're shifting more,
Yeah, yeah.
soon we're shifting.
That's all I had.
Can I ask a follow-up on your question there? Is that estimated, I'm talking about the estimated tax thing, I am kind of curious how that, you mentioned, Sharon, something about using FY 26 rates. So, because I got my bill, I saw the debt increase, I did the math, 99.999% or something, or 9.99% or whatever. Like, okay, that's, ouch. And then, but then I also thought, but this doesn't have an appraisal for my house. And it doesn't have a tax rate. This is an estimate.
So it could be more.
But it's gonna be less because every year property appreciates by more than 2.5%. And every year we end up setting the nominal tax rate goes down. It has gone down every single year. So if we are using the FY 26 rates
It's been
times.
going down, I feel like when they finally said it, so you're right, it's
Yeah,
positive.
right. So I guess, I mean, I can look at my old real estate textbooks and figure out whether or not I understand how this work, but I'm assuming that from the process you've described, it sounds like if every year we were using the previous year's rate for the estimated part of the next year, that's always going to be an overestimate. If the nominal rate goes down.
If the
every
rate
year.
is going
Yeah,
down.
that's right.
Which
But
is-
but we're
As-
getting
as
some
it's
of the
done.
recalc coming in, so it's not gonna go down, it has to go
No.
back to lower than.
No, but the part without filling the gallon.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right, the 2.5% part. Okay.
So I think we're all set, and then we had a hand online, go ahead. Tom Waters, I think. You want to unmute? If you're still there.
Yes, trying to come off mute. Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. First, apologies, I'm not there. I just got back from New York, so I apologize. A couple of things that were going on through the conversation. I'm trying to remember as I try to catch up since I was waiting. First things first, I think it's really important that we understand the 917 community priority and the context of that. If we all remember, this current FY 27 year, the schools took about $847,853,000 cut to a degree, which, as most of you know, at town meeting, I emphasized multiple times, is essentially removing the entire kindergarten community priority that we had over the 5-year period. So we should be looking at 917 and saying we're reinstating the kindergarten community priority and be clear about that, because that was what was cut, and the schools had to do a lot to balance that cut, inclusive of spending money we would not normally spend in FY 27 and remove to a degree our reserves as a result of some of that. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page, and we should make sure the marketing says that appropriately too. That's my two cents. Second, we have every single union in town going into negotiation this year. Every single one. Right?
That's correct,
So
yeah.
we have to be conscious of that. And yes, the schools did put a number in there as a base for the teachers, and a slightly bigger number for another union, just from a base perspective, because of where those unions are compensated. But none of those have been negotiated yet, to the point that was mentioned, Jane, by yourself, right? That is ongoing, some of which we're talking about starting soon, and then proactive in collaborative nature that we have held it over the last few times, but nothing has been committed yet. And some of those unions are already aware that, they all are aware that this override is coming. So it's not going to be an easy conversation for any of us, but something we all should be conscious of and have in our forethought as we're going through the year. Third is part of the conversation. I think, Marianne, you were trying to rehash some of the school committee conversation that we had, and we are going to have a meeting, as Dr. Turner mentioned, to go through in more detail, because we have not yet had a chance to go in detail due to some of the transitions and a few other things that we've been dealing with. So we will have more information ourselves here in the next week and a half or so for that conversation, so that we're more informed and can therefore more inform select board, or more advocate to select board, as the case might be as well. My point in that conversation was more that, we have to think creatively across a lot of things. And we have such a long and continuous strong relationship between school and town.
Yes.
I want that to continue.
Yes.
And I've asked that we look at all sorts of opportunities for furthering that as part of some of these conversations that we're talking about. Some of the non-student facing positions, as an example, and is there something there that we can be doing as we put more, I said this out loud in that meeting, I'll say it out loud as well, as we put the therapeutic in the budget for the recal, the people that you would hire for that are the same people that would do something similar in the schools. In fact, you might compete with us by hiring somebody for that role. So we should be talking creatively around that front, not talking about hiring somebody fresh, but maybe augmenting somebody's salary that's already on the books of the town, but in the schools, in the school place, right?
Is that the thing I heard where you said someone could spend the morning in the schools and the afternoon in the senior center?
That
That's
was,
the position, because I wasn't sure if you meant a paralegal or something.
yeah, that was the construct.
Okay.
We have some very, very skilled professionals that are focused mostly in our special education space, in fairness. So it's not like they can just walk out the door and go work in the recal, but it is something we should be exploring and being creative about. HR and finance are two other places I think we need to be, creative about as we think it through. Just because, not because I don't love them, because they're awesome, but because we just need to be conscious of this. And I very much appreciate the question that somebody asked, I can't tell who, but about other revenue and Eastern Gateway and stuff like that, because we have to include what we have done as a town and what we are doing as a town to increase our revenue base as well. So people are aware, not just of the expenses, and what they're seeing and how they're seeing the 10% rate increase in their tax bases, but what else are we doing as a town to raise the revenue base appropriately? So just some food for thought as we go through this and as we work our way through it. Obviously, those of us on this call, other than our select board members, are not really making the final vote, but just a few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else online? Angela Binda, you can unmute.
Can't you unmute?
Someone has to unmute you, I'm sorry. Just asked her. Okay.
Is that good?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I completely agree with what Mr. Wise said about sharing resources. I think that's a really important thing to think about as we need to look at budgets. I am wondering about the $66,000 for a therapeutic person from the town side. And I'm also wondering about what money is coming in from the Burbank money that was put towards this. So those are questions that I will be asking as we move forward in the budgeting discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. This is anyone else? And anyone in the room have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeffrey Clark, 31 Ridgeville, also. So yeah, I guess in the red column where it says schools cut the 9.7 priority, it's sort of, if you're just looking down and saying, how's this going to hit the schools, you might not go up to the top where it says, oh, we're also cutting some positions, right? So somehow to indicate down there in the school section,
We can move the school section up to.
yeah. You know, cutting the priority in addition to the 67 positions. On the library, right, so the cutting this, you were saying that cutting the Sunday hours isn't exactly what causes, just jeopardizes the certification, it's the total cuts to their budget, right? So I don't know how you word that, right? But right now it says cutting Sunday hours is what's jeopardizing the certification.
Well, it's, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's all for that plus any staffing reduction.
Right, yeah, so,
Basically, one staffing reduction would put them in line. And it would probably need more than.
so Stoneham did something too, right, where they were gonna face the loss of certification, and they filed some sort of hardship.
You can file a waiver, that's true. Sometimes communities are, ours is not to look at it.
Right.
Trying to be short term or going from the road ride or, you can, I don't want to misrepresent, but moving that, that OESJ position into another department, you could say, well, you say in the waiver, this was never actually a real library services role, it's just housed in the library budget. So moving that role, even though it would bring that mix down on the budget, you could say that's not really part of the services, that would be a basis. So I believe I've had that conversation. Maybe kind of what constitutes a waiver, we didn't talk about moving that position, but just to answer your question.
And just in terms of you want to say something that you say you're gonna cut something, you say the certification's gonna be jeopardized if we don't get the override, and then, oh, actually, we pulled this little thing and we filed for a waiver, and so magically we don't get the certification.
Well, I mean,
Right?
I see
How
what
you
you're
word that exactly, to make sure, like, okay, we might be able to do this,
but
but.
that's why it's at risk.
Yeah,
It's not gone, it's at risk.
But could the library pull from their donation funds in some way to get through, say this is a tough year to avoid dropping certification?
That would be a question for board members. I wouldn't want to speculate for that board, but potentially.
I mean, they've got, at one point, I think I looked a few years ago, it was a few million in donation funds, so if it's a matter of 27,000, they might, they've got motion.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that, I mean, there's the Public Library Foundation and Friends, and I looked at their last 990s. Support obviously is around 150,000, so that might be something that they may change your priority, depending on how this goes, and they
I thought-
donate funds to town if they need to, as opposed to capital expenses, but obviously that's an independent choice of either, portion, so.
I thought it was kind of related to the town funding of the budget, not necessarily coming from other sources. So I think
think
that
you're
might
right.
be some of the calculation.
Even
It
if
has
it's
to be,
Donated to the town for the use.
Correct.
it's not part of our operating budget. So I think it's gonna be like
The
you know,
library,
a certain percentage of like the materials and expenses. There's gonna be a certain baseline that we.
I think it would be a good waiver excuse to say, even though it's not in our budget,
Yeah, we
Public
are,
Library Foundation is gonna
exactly.
step
It
up
might be a
and
way
cover
to
some of that.
the hardship.
Yeah, hopefully we don't have to get there, but.
Sorry.
it's if an override fails, that's what we're looking, we'll do the best we can to restore that service payment, but it is at risk, it's a real thing. And Sharon's right, it's the municipal.
That sounds like unfunded mandate, something that the state should.
I don't know that we have any of those.
Debbie, Ms. Eric, I hand up and back to you.
Oh,
Yeah, quick question, just, so town manager woman has, announced to the select board that she will not be filling the assistant town manager position, and, that concerns me, I especially concerned in public meeting, because we are building two massive buildings and, struggling with financial instructional deficits and all the normal stuff that happens. The specific question is, Jane, not having seen this last night, because you were
Right.
working really hard
Yes,
when the
ma'am.
rest of us were sleeping.
Thank you.
Like, is it in here somewhere? Because that was a big position, which if you're
Oh,
not
because
going
she's-
to replace it.
I don't think she was that specific, I think it's.
No, that's why.
Yeah, I did put like eliminating the town, the assistant town engineer.
But it should be under administrative services, I guess.
I don't know that I would keep it on the chart, but we're not funding it right now. Right now, then the other question is, do I fill the administrative services department? I mean, I'm not filling an assistant town manager and now I have another department head that I need to fill. And I'm not sure I'm going to fill that. I will appoint somebody to be the constituent services officer. So I'm being my own example of taking administrative cuts. I think it's important to model to the public that we're serious about this. And so, yeah, I can reflect that on here as well. Okay.
No, I appreciate just having that
No,
conversation. I probably didn't want to hire an assistant town manager when we created the position, but now we're so much bigger. I just don't want to drop any really important balls. Put you in that position.
I appreciate that because sleep matters. And my peer in Wakefield has 2 assistant town managers that she recently filled. I would say.
You say that you've been filled position in these scenarios? Or like if.
No,
Just for that.
No. Right now, I'm not filling some positions in FY '27. And I'm not decided exactly on which of those. I talked with the fire department, we have open positions that we're trying to hire. We're gonna reduce how many we fill. So we're be talking about what do we have, we have a number of positions that are open, labor positions open and so forth. And so we're still gonna fill some of the positions that we're funded for, but not all of them. But right now, the plan is to fund the assistant, the administrative services director role, it's currently open. In, the school board budget. But if it passes, the override passes, if it fails, I don't know if I filled it at all, I restructure.
And then the assistant town manager coming in. Just
Potentially, I haven't put that number into our budget. Dr. Carr, sorry, I had one more question.
So town accountant mentioned the trying to preserve the AAA bond rating. And one question I would have is, we've already borrowed most of the amount, and what we're gonna borrow, the rest is a little bit less because the bids came in so nicely. And my question is, what happens if we lose our AAA bond rating? How much extra interest rate does the town, how much extra interest cost is the town going to incur by that? And are we still under the amount that the town voters approved was a certain amount, which includes all these interest payments? So if we're not paying as much in the actual expenses for it, can we pay more in the interest because we've dropped our bond rating and have to pay extra on the interest and still stay within the amount that the voters approved?
So the debt exclusion allows us to pay for the debt service, whatever that ends up being. If we drop down bond rating, it's going to increase our interest. I think in the beginning, when we had quoted out what the interest difference would be from a AAA to the drop down, the AA plus, I think they said it was 1 million to 1.5 million more interest. Now, when you looked at all of the projections for those projects, when we did a 30-year borrowing, doubled the project. So we're talking a lot of interest. We're already paying a lot of interest. I wouldn't want to advocate for another $1 million worth of interest, but that was, I think, the whole project, both projects, the whole project. We borrowed more than 60%, so I'd have to do some crunching to get what would be the remainder. I will say that for a small community like Reading, to have a AAA bond rating is a great accomplishment that you don't want to take lightly, letting go. I think that part of what, when we have our S&P calls, they say, we like the way you do things, but what if management changes and things get done differently? And they might take it as a sign that we don't hold the same values that we did in the past, and we don't have that same structure, because there are things about the way we do things that isn't like enforced strictly, right? We pay off our debt quickly. They like that about the way we do things. They like the way we budget. They like the discipline in our budget. And if they start to see things going the other direction, we start to wonder, is there a management shift here and a shift in philosophy that we're not going to be on board with? I think we struggle to get it back if we were to let it go. So I really don't want to find out how long it takes to get it back. If we lose it, if we can preserve it, I would prefer it. Obviously, circumstances less than ideal. Sometimes those things happen, but we want to do everything in our power and make decisions knowing that is at risk.
Another question on the tying the free cash to the capital sort of going forward. Would that actually look like? And I mean, right now we have a 5% target, that much capital. So does that 5% then expand and contract based on how much regeneration we had in the previous year?
No, what I would say is you don't spend more free cash than your capital portion, so not debt and capital, the capital portion of that 5%. So it's a cap. So you don't have to spend that much. You could just say, we're gonna do $2 million in free cash, even though we're spending, because every year that 5% rises in real dollars, right? So it's always going to increase. It gives you a little, a little bit of room, but if we're saying we're maintaining a discipline that we're not going to spend more than what we're spending in capital, we're not gonna support it with the free cash, then it's one-time monies matching one-time dollars. You don't, I think in the first few years, if we passed an $11 million, the first few years, you'd have so much regeneration and it would be funded, the 5% would be funded in that budget, right? Fully without free cash, right? So you wouldn't have to. And then as you went along and have inflationary pressures, you would support it, but you would only support it to that free cash, to that capital funding. It's a discipline. Once you get beyond that, you say, you gotta do something. Now, when we get out to FY 32, we've paid off our pension line. That frees up millions of dollars. So you put it in OPEB. But
That's really hard to, it's like, it seems like no matter, every time we do evaluation on the pension, they change valuation, they change like assumptions that they're using, mortality tables, the investment rate that you're gonna get. Did you have gains or losses on what we did put in for assumptions? And sometimes that increases your liability, and we're so close to being fully funded that any big number is hard to take in one year, and it forces your fully funded year up. And it has the last couple of years. We've gone from 2029 to 2032. So as much as I want to believe that we will be fully funded at 2032, we do have to be cautious about that because it's possible to be pushed out by any number of losses that we could suffer in terms of evaluations that we.
John, you had a question. And then Joe, you had a question too. Okay, John.
Follow up, Jeremy's question about the bond rating and going recalculate. You said earlier that we might put off the second tranche of borrowing until by 29.
The first debt payment on the second tranche, we're hoping to push it up to 29. So that would mean we could borrow at some point in fiscal 28.
So I was gonna say, concerned about the AAA bond rate, we better about that to do that borrowing sooner to get better rate.
No, I don't think it would be a good idea. I mean, largely because I feel like right now, if I'm right about where free cash is going, we're at 12%. They would downgrade us at this point, saying you're not even meeting our minimum 15. Likely what we would do if we're borrowing in fiscal 28, and it's early in the year, we'd probably do short-term borrowing, a ban, and then that would be just interest only. Depending on when in the year, we might have one interest payment, might have two, depending on when I have to borrow. As I said, I did borrow enough based on the cash flows that we had originally to get us through June of 2027. So that means that I was planning to borrow in 28. But now that we've got these contracts coming in lower, it could actually give us much more time, and I could be borrowing more towards the middle or the end of that fiscal year, which would have no impact on interest, but I do have money budgeted in fiscal 28 for interest, but it could actually save us money. It could be money that comes back to free cash and regeneration. So it's all about getting those updated cash flows from the projects and figuring out when is that next borrowing happen. And as we get closer, it will become more clear.
It might help a little bit if we changed our policy, like on how we capitalize, like thinking of a ambulance, police, we capitalize those rather than took them out of the operating budget.
They are capitalized, actually. The polices are capitalized, but I think that we show them as an operating budget because they don't last 5 years for us.
But if we want to, we could just borrow rather than take that money directly out.
But we could do that, yeah. But
It would give a little lift to the operating budget for.
They look at them as operating expenses because the cars run pretty much 24/7. They do not last the set amount of time, like the 5 years that you would expect at least cars to last. And so, I don't know, years ago under another town manager, they decided that it was more of an operating expense because they were buying so many of them. It wasn't, like the detectives' cars get driven a lot less than their other.
But the ambulance, like, I just wondered, like, can we change the policy, like how we think of the useful life though? Hopefully the ambulance is gonna last, what, 5
Oh, yeah,
The
the
ambulance
ambulance is on there for, I think, 10 or.
It's a 10, yeah, they're looking to replace the 10-year, so, yeah. That is in capital. The ambulance is in capital, it's not.
It's just the cruise, yeah, it's just.
And the equipment that goes on the ambulance.
Okay, so when we say we're taking it out, we're technically taking it out
Capital.
We're taking
Yeah,
out
5.
capital plan.
of 5 and 6.
So in
That's right.
essence, that
That's
budget,
that
the six,
900, almost $1 million we took out of capital.
that budget, that was the $6.5
Yeah, I don't know,
million
well,
dollars.
maybe people besides us wouldn't care about that, but I don't
We
know.
had about
It's like,
3 million, 9 point, yeah, a little under $4 million built in just for capital in that original budget.
okay.
If no override passes, we cut $989,000 of capital, and part of that is the ambulance, the equipment, the simulation mannequin, all the stuff that goes along with it.
Fencing.
So it's a lot of money. I think the simulation mannequin was 210,000, the ambulance is 500,000, and all the equipment that goes along with it. And so I usually try and keep all that stuff together. I don't buy an ambulance and not be able to equip it with
Yeah.
everything it needs. And so they kind of come as a package deal. Some people go like, okay, we could probably go another year, let's defer it. And so to save positions, it made sense to us to, because we were putting a pretty high number in there for capital. That 5% brought us to about $4 million. Cutting that $1 million seemed to be the thing to do to help with the position.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if it's necessary or not, like say, reduce a capital like investment. Like some people would be concerned about if we are making long-term capital, cuts that are gonna come back to haunt us potentially.
Yeah, well, we're deferring, so we're just pushing things out by.
Everything kind of moves out a year, so they do that to move. But it's less than ideal, but it's.
Yeah.
So, I guess this agenda item lists, a vote on recommended override amounts. I don't,
There's a whole other presentation.
oh, okay, the vote was before, yeah, no, the vote was listed before, but I guess I'm just wondering, do we think, in the process, do we have to have that vote tonight? Vote on a recommended override amount? I mean, we're gonna hear the rest of the presentation, but
The select board will be taking a vote on the 22nd. And so I think it would behoove the select board to have recommendation from FinCom. And the intention of these dates is to, if the select board chooses to pursue a November ballot date, we have to have that information in the state house.
okay, well, we'll hear the rest. I just wanted to see if we were gonna have to have that vote.
You could also listen to the presentation tonight and hold another meeting before the 22nd.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. That's like.
Like a great summer, yeah.
I think we do need to have like that backup plan
Okay,
starting to
well,
come
we can
together.
get a sense too, because like Chris, you had a
Sure, question. So at the end of the day, the select board's ultimate responsibility is to choose the number. So we could put recommendations, they could say, no.
Yeah,
Right.
and we could pick something
Not
in
just
between
us.
these.
To be honest with you, we kind of have it, not to say we, but it's a little backwards. I think they're leaning on us to come up with a recommendation of free cash, so they can then evaluate it back into single option, multiple option. Is it 8? Is it 7? Is it 4? Is it not? So I personally would not be comfortable voting on an override amount today. I'd rather evaluate what they choose.
It's not the override amount, it's the
Well,
what do
that's
we do?
That's what the vote says, vote recommended override amount.
Oh, is it
Right.
misworded? I thought that the vote tonight was supposed to be for if an override were to fail, what would your recommendation be for free cash so that we can nail down about?
I'm definitely on board with the free cash already, honestly.
That's not what I don't know if would be out of line with an open meeting law thing, because that's not what the vote was supposed to be.
But they're supposed to be the recommended amount.
Maybe it should have said free cash amount.
We did have an email thread about the addendum.
Yeah, I do think we wanted to see where you were at. I don't know if that requires
Maybe it could be a
vote.
straw poll vote on, but not a binding vote.
Yeah, and also, the free cash recommendation today, I guess, is it not really binding? I mean, we're not
Right,
making.
but also.
It's just a suggestion. I
That's
totally agree.
strategic
I'm
plan, yeah.
definitely on board with coming up with a suggestion for a free cash amount to better guide the select board next week.
We need to know how much free cash we have.
Correctly, which is in this presentation,
Yeah.
hopefully.
It is.
And that is what's gonna guide the select
Right,
board
but
going
I
forward.
guess that's not what's on the agenda, which is my concern.
I think it's
If there's no vote.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so, okay, so
Please.
former chair here, you know, who, you know, asked at our last meeting, what is the, you know, FinCom asked for. So, you know, first the point about like recommendations binding, yeah, like literally nothing that FinCom, but we advised our meeting, select board, as I understand it, select board asked us for recommendations. And that it makes sense for them to ask us for recommendations because we spend even more hours learning about this stuff than they do. So great, hopefully we can help. A recommendation implies a use of free cash, but I wasn't asked for, when putting together the budget for the agenda for tonight's meeting. Cause in the email thread we had, nobody asked me for a vote on a recommended amount of free cash outside of the context of a vote on a recommended amount or amounts.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, if you recommended an override amount, that doesn't necessarily imply free cash to get there, right? Because we could pick a number, not in, we could pick, you know, 9 million, right? And that could be achieved in different ways. So, go ahead, Andrew.
Very confused. It says discuss override options. So that's part of the first sentence. And then it says vote and vote on recommend override. So we can do, when we discuss about the override option, I'll say an override option is X amount of money from free cash and then 6.5 million. It's within what it says. I don't think we're doing anything wrong.
No, but I
But
feel
the
like,
vote is only contained on the override amount. But we're free to say that, to discuss about the free cash use. So I
Yeah.
would say about that.
But I guess we would pick, and we're gonna hear more about what hole we're plugging, right? And, you know, how are we gonna plug that hole next year when it's 10 million? We know it's 7.5 million, and we know we need 10 million, and you can get to 10 million, partially be override and partially be free cash use.
but I
So,
do think that when it comes to the override scenario, it is the collaboration between FinCom and the select board. They need to give a recommendation, because you guys are more any means. I think that they're kind of counting on you to kind of tell them what your thoughts are based on where you see our reserve position is. And based on what you're seeing.
and you can tell us, we should not go below this amount of our, we're counting stabilization fund towards it, but this is the lowest you could go, so here is the maximum free cash you have for next year. And we may not go to that, so that's. Why don't we get,
Let's get to the.
yeah, let's get to your part of the presentation, but I just want to know where this is going to.
All right, so bottom line, we reviewed these numbers will be familiar by now. Level 2 budget is a 3.75% increase. It maintains educational excellence for our schools, 5.25%. Increase achieved through a community priority of 917. The proposed override range is 6.5 to 11. $6.5 million is supplement of $3.3 million in free cash would be needed to fulfill the level 2 budget. We previously talked about $7.5 million, reduce that in part through additional positions that won't fill. At $10 million, no supplemental free cash would be needed in year 1. At $12 million, free cash would be pushed out.
How much free cash would be needed in year 2 at 10 million? Get to that?
It's on the sheet. Yeah,
Okay.
Cost drivers, important for folks to understand, decades of insufficient local aid from Beacon Hill. FY 27 was the beginning of a new 5-year trash contract, which increased over FY 26, 39.5%. The 10-year JRM contract was a sweet, sweet deal. And unfortunately, those days are over. I beg your pardon? Let's see,
This is select board need to be.
Oh, yeah.
No, Melissa joined at 8:23, so they still have a quorum.
Actually, I have Chris Kansas Gillis and Melissa.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And then we decreased it 8% for FY 28 by removing the weekly recycling. I wanted to keep it in and have weekly recycling in at the lower level, but then we couldn't sustain it even at that 6.5. million level, so it had to go. Inflationary pressures are driving up fuel, labor, and benefits. Health insurance skyrocketed in recent years, and that's uncertainty. We are planning for 10% increases in the next few years. We are grateful to our software expenditures, including building security, our computer-aided dispatch, and parking enforcement were important investments that have big costs. And just so folks understand, the computer-aided dispatch, anybody remembers what a TRS-80 was? Or, there you go, you know, early, yeah.
Oh my God. Just think of a Radio Shack.
Where it's like a cursor. Have you seen War Games, that movie? Fantastic. I make the 80s movies. That's kind of what the computer-aided dispatch, that's what they're working with now. The new system comes online in January. So I mean, what we can do with the really old system is amazing, but it's.
No one can hack it.
Gotta go.
It's not on the internet.
Right, no, so, and our insurance policies for the new builds, we did renegotiate our property and casualty insurance policies last year. Bring them down for FY 27, which is great news, but our estimates for the new buildings will come online FY 28, so that's a big expense. We're estimating that at 230. Things we've done so far. We've renegotiated health insurance agreement with the PEC. We're grateful to our employees who are local, they're residents, they understand the problems that we're facing, they were great to work with. And so we're projecting savings over 3 years. What was the increase going to be this year?
So they were
14%?
estimating it to be at 14%, but then they took the GLP-1s off and down to 10.86, and now we're gonna renegotiate that down to 5%. So we actually have a larger number on our budget because that agreement had been settled, us setting that budget.
Yeah, so we have done plan design change. This is the first major plan design change. 35 years. So, and PEC's done other changes. They've worked with the town. They've been, you know, they've given back things to town, but this is a big change. They weren't deductible before, there are now. We've renegotiated property and casualty insurance. We're leaving some positions unfilled. We're increasing fees. In fact, last night, the select board approved in their consent agenda town clerk fees in a few areas. The fire department's increased their ambulance fees. So we've been doing that kind of work. It seems foolish maybe, but we've cut our office supplies across the board 10%. And when you've been level funding your office supplies for 5 years, you know, that can be a little difficult. We've reduced our capital budget, and pensions will be fully funded by FY 32.
4.5, or I thought we said 4 capital.
So this is fiscal 27, we went from 5 to 4.
For FY 28.
Fiscal 28 is a different.
It's done 4, and if it fails, it's over, it fails, it's down to 3.
Next slide.
And Jane, just quickly, the positions though, is there a hiring freeze or?
I instituted it yesterday.
Oh, okay, so it's not on this, but there is, okay.
There is a brand spanking new.
Okay, I know you can't say this, but like on the school side, do they have? a hiring freeze?
That's the school committee, that's the superintendent of schools. I do not control their budget. No, no, they do.
I don't think they can do that because just even if they're mandated to hire, you know, one-on-one aid because of
Yeah.
someone's IEP, you just can't.
Well,
commit to that.
and as I said before, I will be hiring some people, and I'll be very careful about what we're doing and so forth. It's not that I'm not gonna hire anybody, but it's, all the department heads have to bring their positions to me for approval and be more austere than what has been the practice. All right, so I hand it over to Sharon to talk about your reserve status.
So we started off fiscal 26 with $17.3 million of free cash, and then we all used certified November and April town meeting. We used about a little under $8.6 million, so roughly half of our free cash got used in fiscal 26. And so we're estimating regeneration. Is a little bit easier for me to estimate regeneration for the revenue because that's more obvious right now. We're still processing warrants for fiscal 26, so the expense side is still a little bit unknown, and also the payroll accrual. We still have payroll accruals for this week's payroll that actually relate to fiscal 26. So I'm estimating, based on what I've seen in the last couple of years and based on what I'm seeing currently with the budget, about $1 million. So basically, our free cash is estimated to be, and this could be low if that $1 million is low, but I'm estimating conservatively, $13.6 million of free cash. We got just over $2.1 million of stabilization, and then we have our FinCom reserves, of just shy of $16 million total reserve. However, that's only 11.98% of our net available revenues for fiscal '27. So we're definitely no longer in the space that we want to be from using as much free cash as we have. So this slide is from town meeting. It's essentially showing our actual reserves in comparison to our 7% minimum. And then in fiscal '26 and '27, it had been projected using actual use of free cash, which was $8.57 million for fiscal '26. And then assuming we use the same amount that we started off fiscal '27 with for fiscal '28 at 6.475, and the regeneration at the conservative $3 million. If that was the way we played it out at the end of fiscal '27, we would be right up in line with the 7%, which is not ideal. It's not ideal for our bond rating, but also just it's diminishing our returns.
Sharon, a very quick question. I thought I heard in the school committee meeting someone saying, well, 7% isn't really what we want 10%.
We want 15 to 20 is what we really want to keep our bond rating right 12. So yeah, so right now, I mean, that would actually be going further the other direction. It's I guess what I'm pointing out, if we were to use the same amount of free cash in fiscal '28, which would be voted in fiscal '27 April town meeting, that would actually lend itself to the potential of us actually butting up with the 7% minimum reserve that we set for ourselves, which is different from what bond rating agencies are looking for. They're really, it used to be 10% was sufficient, now it's 15 to 20. So having used so much free cash in such a short time, we've actually put ourselves at risk, which I don't think we kind of on the onset knew all of the things that would come up in fiscal '26 that would require free cash, especially with snow and ice. It's a big surprise. I don't think I've ever seen us request $1 million for snow and ice. So the things that went down in '26 were not exactly anticipated. So I don't know that I would be in favor in trying to go with that kind of a number for fiscal '28. So that's the reason to show you that, because that would bring us down and we might actually be in danger of falling between our own reserve, which is the 7%. So we'd be right in line with that, which is less than ideal. This slide shows us on the blue is the free cash used each year, and the red is what we regenerated each year. And you can see in early years, most years we regenerated well more than we used. But in recent years, it started to assert, it's going the other way. We're actually using more than we're regenerating. So we're just kind of depleting our reserves. That's what's happening, which is the need for the override. We're definitely in a space where we need more free cash to plug the structural deficit that you're regenerating, which is just making reserves go down fast. Now, this is the structural deficit. This is a 2-slide thing. And what's happening here is I'm showing you our accommodated cost. Our accommodated cost in Reading is we take the money for accommodated costs off the top before we split the money with the school and the town. And these are areas that can be kind of hard to control. Their benefits, out of district special ed, debt, energy costs, veterans aid, insurance, all of these things are taken off the top. And during the last few years, they have been outrageously high. The percentage of increase is well above what we would expect. And so what the purpose of this slide is to tell you where is that structural deficit created. Oh yes, sorry, I forgot I had that. So essentially, up here, these are all actuals from fiscal '20 to fiscal '26. I've updated this to be actuals through last week, even though we're not completely done, just to give you a feel. And so this basically shows you in this column here, the difference between what we spent in fiscal '26 and what we spent in '20, how much that changes, what the percentage is over that 7-year period. Over here, it's what would I anticipate those to go up? What would be affordable under a Prop 2.5 budget? 2.5% every year for 7 years would be 17.5%. So this number here represents what 17.5% would look like. However, this is what we saw. So there's a structural deficit built in here. You know, so the very first line, our pensions went up $3.6 million over what they were in 2020, which is a 71% increase. But if I did 17.5% increase, I would have only been at 731. So this $2.8 million is kind of the kind of piece that we've been filling in with free cash. It's anything above what can be afforded under a Prop 2.5. So I used 2.5. It could even been 3, which is generally showing you this is the problem. These are our actual costs. These are not our budget. This is our actual cost, and they have risen dramatically in all these areas. So in the area of benefits, we have $5.2 million of structural deficit because they rose 71.75%. And then in capital, I didn't show you capital because capital's all over the place because we're waiting a long time. If we buy a fire truck in 1 year, we don't get it until 2 years later. So it really wasn't making the numbers make sense. But capital has been increasing at a very double-digit rate, 20% more. But it really made this look kind of funky, so I did put it in. Debt, about $1 million difference in the debt area. Energy, $574,000 of structural deficit is coming from that area. It's not letting me put it inside.
Just like Sharon, when you say debt, though, like I'm trying to understand that. Forward 2.5, like, because debt's not really, that's a function of how much.
No, but
That's the, I guess it's the 5% you're saying.
So what I'm basically saying, like, in terms of, we do this 5% and we're balancing debt up, but in general, like, if you were to say a Prop 2.5 budget can really afford things going up about 2.5 to 3%. And so our debt changed enough that it went up over that, you know, so that $271, $271,425 is what I would have hoped for our debt to change, but we ended up borrowing for more things, and so we have $1 million there. So it's basically just showing you just the change, and it's just to let you know that the actuals really are coming in much higher than what you can really afford in a Prop 2.5 budget. I mean, the biggest source of revenue that a community has is the taxes, which only can go up 2.5%, and our overall revenues only go about 3.2, 3.5. So really anything that goes up more than that 3.5%, it's really messing up our budget and making us cut other areas to help with this. And we've been plugging this hole with free cash. So as I said, that's a small piece of it, the debt, but then the energy is 574. So this is the second page of accommodated costs. Also, we have financial, which is our property insurance and veterans assistance. Veterans has been on the decline, but our property casualty is up 420,000 above what we would have expected. And that's with us actually having in fiscal 26 some savings, I thought. Yeah, was it fiscal 27 we got the savings?
Is that just because like insurance rates are going up everywhere? I mean, like we all
Yes,
see that with our home.
We went to our insurer and gave real hard time, said you need to bring our property
And
insurance
that's
casualty
fiscal
rates
27,
down
right?
because we had really good loss ratios.
Yeah,
And
even one.
it went down. So we paid less in FY 27.
So in the accommodated cost section, the only piece of special ed that we pick up in accommodated cost is the out of district special ed, which is the area where we have the least amount of control about the pricing. And so that can really be a budget buster. So we pull that out before we split the money. And that only had increased 508,000, but it doesn't tell the whole picture of special ed in general, because there's a conscious effort on the part of the superintendent and the school committee to try and spend more money in district on special ed to make it so that fewer kids go out of district. And so down below, I give you a little bit more information about special ed because it's very telling. I mean, the overall special ed is up 1.6 over what the 2.5% every year would afford. And it breaks it down to in district is almost 1.1 million, or a little over 1.1 million, and 508 for out of district, which is the part that's in our accommodated cost section. So that's significant, besides being absorbed in an operating budget that's only been going up 3 to 4% every year. So that's kind of a lot for that to have gone up above. And then vocational schools, as you know, there's a school being built in Wakefield, and we started to see capital charge. That's $1 million, just about above what we would have anticipated, and we're seeing increased enrollment at those schools, so we're actually seeing more of a piece of the capital. So the way things work is every year their operating budget and their capital, whatever their debt payment is broken up to the communities based on how many students from your community come to their school divided by the overall number. And so the more students you have go, the bigger this number for capital becomes and the operating budget for that. So we are seeing an increase of students going to that school as well. So that's where that $1 million comes from, that capital being the biggest piece. Rubbish is 194,000 above, and that doesn't include the fiscal 27 new contract. It's up 39.5%. So this is before that actually hits, and it's still up almost $200,000 more than what could have been afforded in a Prop 2.5 budget. Snow and ice was at $1.5 million in fiscal 26, so $800,000 was covered by free cash. Essentially over this timeframe. State assessments, something's missing in the state assessments, so that number is going to be big. State assessments, go up every year, but they're very gradual. But I can see I have an incomplete number here. It looks like we're missing a month that hasn't been posted yet. But it wasn't a significant piece when we're looking at it through fiscal 20 to fiscal 25. But I didn't have the number to put in there yet. So, but that could be up, but probably not much. And then down the grand total here is $9.5 million of structural deficit that we've absorbed through free cash and cuts within our budget. So that's noteworthy because a lot of people say, well, what do you need this money for? You're not adding anything. What am I getting from our money? We're just filling the hole that inflation has created in our expenses. This is the Prop 2.5 override histories of the ones that have passed. 1993, we got a $2.4 million override. That lasted us 10 years. We did 4.5 at that point. That passed and lasted us 15 years. The override we got in 2018 was smaller than the one we got 15 years prior. Time value of money, I would have expected that number to pass at a bigger amount, but it did not. We went with a lower number because the first override failed. And we still somehow made that 4.15 million last 9 years. And the estimate was 3 to 5 years. So the combination of using our reserves and the CARES Act and ARPA, all of those things, those grants actually helped us extend up and get to that difficult period of the pandemic.
Back in 2018 too, I think we were only using like 1.5 million to 2 at most.
Yeah, we weren't using
radically different.
Yeah, a dramatic difference. This slide shows you the average tax bill. As I said, I cannot give you fiscal 27 average assessed value. It's too hard. So I had to leave the 944,193. But what I did add to the slide, the average tax bill for fiscal 26 was 10,348. I show you the impacts that you see in your fiscal 27 tax bills, which was estimated at $60.19 per 100,000 of value, which would have been $568 for your average tax bill. So if you were trying to figure out, well, where's my bill going to be kind of around, you would take the 10,348, add in the 568, and you're getting closer to where that bill would be. But there's also that appreciation of your property value. It could have gone up 2.5%, it could have gone up 3%, depending on how quickly your property is appreciating in comparison to others. You could see more than 2.5. Most people would see a similar thing. And that shows you what an override impact would be. So for the $6.5 million that Jane had discussed as the low number that we would hope for, that would be $736 for the average taxpayer. And 14 million, I can't see us ever asking for that, but I give you all the different levels. I can't see that housing, I can't see us asking for it, but I gave it to you because we're not asking for that, but I give it to you so you can see kind of what the impact is. Because we did get a large list of things in that level 1 budget for department heads that went unfunded, at least $1.7 million worth of things just on the outside. I can imagine if we needed to kind that they would have had. So if there was an appetite for it, it definitely could have been a higher number, but I don't see that being where we're heading. We're trying to go for the lowest possible number. We had talked about the tiered approach. We'd also mentioned in the beginning of our conversations, and at the end of the budget season for fiscal 27, that there's always the option of phasing in an override. So this would show you an example of impact if you were taking a $10 million override and you were to spread it over 3 years. So the first year you'd see $453 hit your tax bill. The next year I would only ask for $2 million. So you would only see 226 added because you're going to be having the actual second tranche of debt is probably going to hit there. And then year 3, you'd see 453. It still adds up to the same total on the prior slide, but just to give you an idea of what kind of impact you'd see each year. And I give you a few different examples. The 6.5, we could say, oh, let's do that over 2 years, or you could even do 3, where you do the first one at 5 million and then do nothing year 2, and year 3 you do this 169. So there's a lot of ways we could structure that if that is where people feel more comfortable as having it phased in at different amounts. I don't know, did we find out for sure if a tiered approach could be done like this? I think the way it works, it can be. The way this works though too, is that if there was a $10 million override and we say it's going to be spread over 3 years, we give you the kind of parameters that we would do it by. The way that would work is DOR would see that your override passed for $10 million. So on the tax recap, it would add $10 million to my levy. The way that works is I would physically leave excess capacity on the table. I would not charge you.
You run the risk though of town meeting on floor spending it, in theory.
I've never seen that happen, but I guess it's a possibility. But they would have to have trust in me that I would not do something opposite of what I said, or what, that Jen and I would be holding our word. And
I guess the question is, if you took a different position, right, it's that your replacement could take it all, right?
Exactly, if
Yeah.
something happened to me and I wasn't here, but I think.
Not that we've won anything, but I'm just saying, it's dependent on the personal word of a person.
And the other thing, I think that there could be some sort of wording that you put out there. I don't know how binding it is to say this is how it's structured and this is the way it's going to happen. But the way it would happen on the tax recap is I would leave the excess capacity. So in the $10 million scenario, if I took $4 million that first year, the excess capacity I have to leave to hold to my word is $6 million. The second year, I would have the 4 million built into my baseline, and I'm gonna have to leave 4 million at the end of it. And that's how it would work, because DOR doesn't kind of police us on that, so that it would be kind of one of those, the residents would have to have faith that we would execute as we said we would. Which I just.
Sharon, we have a couple of questions, both on FinCom, and there's a raised hand online if you want.
Oh, yeah, that's fine, go ahead.
So so when we're talking about spreading it over it, is this wording, when you say we're communicating this, is this wording that goes in the actual ballot? Or is
That's my
this?
question, no, it's
Okay.
not going. So how would the public understand that?
Right.
It would be through the information session, the information you put out, we have a tax calculator.
I know.
You know, but if they're coming in and they're voting on something else and they see this, they may just not understanding, right? They may not, I mean,
It could be confusing, for sure. And it has to be well communicated when the conversations are happening with the residents, there's information sessions.
Very. If there was you had a question, you then
So
also
the
Karen.
benefit of spreading it out is that it's the taxpayer less. So I think it's important to know that the taxpayer just got hit with that debt exclusion. So the softer we make it, I personally like this approach, just because of where we are right now.
I guess if they vote without understanding, I don't know, they'll be
Well, that's
confused, but yeah.
Education, you gotta educate the board.
And we had a select board member, Herrick, had her hand raised. And then Angela Binda, but select board member Herrick first, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I just glad to see this presented. And then last night, the select board meeting, maybe during, maybe after, we talked about whether or not, if our community makes a decision to do an override and phase it over several years, whether there is oversight from DOR, and I think I heard maybe there isn't any, and it's all done
Correct.
internally. Are we positive on that answer?
Yep.
You check with Sean Cronin.
I spoke with Sean Cronin today at he is DLS, he's the guy.
Yeah,
he's.
Okay, so
I spoke with him today and he says, all they get back at DOR is, the amount of the override and, when we voted it in and what it's for. So, and that comes from your question, so we might put it on for operating and for schools, or if you look on DLS right now, it says, so for the 4.15, it's like operating schools and everything else, so we just put it on it, so. Yeah, but, no, so they don't police us as to that, I did ask that question.
Okay, no, that's a good answer, because, we do have residents that just we want to do what we say we're doing and being very clear and have accountability. But thank you.
Oh, you asked a question before I go back.
Sorry
The
to
audience.
jump the queue here, but
No,
the FinCom member, I wanna make it's just an observation rather than a question. All of these year one numbers are small, on this example, are smaller than the 6.5 million that we think we need for the yellow case here, so and this maybe doesn't change the point, like in terms of if we put multiple override options on the ballot, the ones that are bigger than 6.5, could be spread out, but presumably they would need we would still need this first 6.5 in the first year for the same reason that we need 6.5 the first year.
It would require us to use free cash, but knowing you have it passed, you know you're getting it back from the taxpayer, you can spread it out.
And
Yeah.
even if we're instituting the override in over 3 years, you restore some of the positions, or some of the expenses, and you can restore those later too. So you bring stuff back online in the second year.
Right, but 6.5 is what we need to get in order to get these things, so if the impact in year one was only 4 million,
You would get
2.5 million of
later.
these things wouldn't be coming the first year,
That's right.
which is a wash.
But for me, as your manager, I like that scenario better than no things coming in.
Oh,
having
yeah,
that
no,
same
in
tax.
terms of the red columns,
But what you're doing this year, you're gonna be generating more next year for FY 28, so. you
Because
sort
I'm
of-
holding some
Yeah.
positions open, yeah, I expect there'll be some regeneration, but there's also, some funding there, they're unexpected.
I mean, the expense is a lot like, we have needed to add more money at town meeting, in spring. Every year, it seems like we need to add, every town meeting, it seems like we need to add more in Article 5 or whatever it is. Because, which I assume is the effect of like the level funding expenses and then level fund expenses and then. And then. the
Well,
whole-
some of that might not have happened to the extent it did either. If we knew there was an override, some of that free cash spending in prior years might not have happened.
Yeah, we
To
might
the
have
extent.
decided, oh, we won't do, I'm not saying pickleball, but I mean, something we might have been a little tighter in some of our decisions. No, please, pickleball, I don't mean, just saying, like, it's been so easy with 300,000 here and 300,000 there, right?
But I do think it's a different scenario if you're using free cash, knowing an override for $10 million is passed, because you know you're getting it back. Do you know what I mean?
Right, so.
And also too, in this budget, this fiscal 28 budget, there is a fully loaded budget for these new buildings for all of the costs for a full year so that it's part of our baseline. We're not gonna spend all of that, but I have to do that just to get them built in at 100%. So there is a lot of extra that's actually built into fiscal 28 to get that fully loaded for those buildings. And we're not going to spend all that money. So we could be putting the free cash in to balance it, but we would probably put it right back into free cash. You know what I mean? So I do feel like and also too, from a perspective of S&P looking at us, if we were doing a permanent borrowing, they see that that you have a past override that you're phasing in, like the way we would explain, they would feel like you've got the backing of your residents. I think they'd be less concerned. And also too, I could put off a permanent borrowing, I could do a short-term borrowing until we got closer to the end of the project. So there's a lot of options there. So I do think that the 4 million is less than ideal because we need 6.5. But if you pass the $10 million override or $11 million or $8 million, I know that I'm getting that money back into free cash.
Yeah.
Just can I ask one quick thing? Maybe you already said this. Joe made me think of, or one of you, oh, well, we're not putting back everything at 4 million. What is the cost of every week recycling versus every other week? Not that I feel like that's the most.
It's maybe 49,000.
So that's a lot of money. I mean, if we didn't put that back, but we were keeping teaching positions or keeping police positions, I'm just.
It's 4 people.
But that 6.5 number doesn't have it in the week.
Right, I'm just saying, in terms of what we're not putting back, that might be the
higher.
people might miss that less than other things, I think.
I don't know. I lived through all of the conversations and the phone calls about recycling and the trash contract. And
Yeah.
there was a lot, so,
I guess everyone's still adjusting to it too.
And we
right?
could tweak
And
any
it's
one
going
of these.
pretty
to
well,
match what and we could tweak any one of these to make it work, you know, but
That's
it's
just-
the whole
that's just
idea is
huge
to let them
chunk right
work.
there.
It is, and that's why, you're absolutely right. That's why it's like, that's an easy one to
Yeah.
say, we're gonna.
So to me, it's like the last thing you went back. Go ahead, Andrea, and then I'm gonna go to Angela online.
Question on how long this will last us? Like to go with a 6.5 or with an 11 or with an 8. What's the expectation of the next override?
You correct me, Emma, do you have that number? Do you have
I would
that?
say that at the 6.5, we're lucky if we get the 3 to 5 years, it's really a big slide number. Because if things continue to increase the way they have been, especially health insurance being one of our larger expense items outside of salaries, continuing to increase at a double-digit percentage, 3 to 5 years would be the most I could promise out of practically anyone of these numbers if that kept happening. I'm hoping that it will stabilize. So I think what we were told by Maya was next couple of years, still budget a 10% number. And then I start putting a 7 or 8, but that's still hard. 7 or 8 is still a number that does not work with a budget like this. So for the next 5 years, I'm showing either a 10 or a 7 or 8 and look that those numbers, if they end up being lower, help us. But I have to be conservative and keep those numbers up until I see that those numbers are gonna be lower. So it's really hard to say.
The 11 million, with our projected deficit is like 11.4 in FY 32. So if we did an 11 million number, that should get us to FY 32.
And then we get the structural deficit back.
And you get the.
And then you'd be getting money infused into our
Like a
budget.
mini override, but something.
Yeah.
If the health care might eat it all.
By that point, Eastern Gateway should be coming up.
Yeah, if
So-
that,
so
if
I
it really
want-
happens, yeah.
We need at least 5 years. 5 years we need at least.
We need what the electorate can tolerate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean,
We've asked a lot.
I understand, the irony is not lost on me that over the 4th of July weekend, where we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of our independence from King George III's tax policy, that people are opening their tax bills and seeing increased taxes, and we're talking about an override at the same time, right? Like that irony. Yeah.
But it's a structure.
It's a structural deficit.
You either get that.
Well, and I'm your new town manager, but I've been here for 10 years, and I will say that I think Sharon and this committee over the years have done an excellent job of making the override last. The last override was less than what we've done 15 years before that. I mean, you're not catching up and growing and you know, doing those things. The town is austere. Department heads are very good at managing their budgets. You know, the work has been done and continue to do that work, whatever the electorate does, but it will start consequences.
And these are just examples. We could structure it ever way we wanted. We could make the first year 6 million to fit less than what we have to do to make it work. It's just to give you an example of how you could spread it out to make it less painful for the taxpayer, which is a great concern for us.
I like the idea, like the spreading it out, but it's really just good faith from the taxpayer, right? Like we could say, come back in year 2, ask for 11 million, all of a sudden we push up 5 million in year 2.
Yeah,
And because the DOR doesn't control the timing of it, or they just see the 11 million. So-
Yeah, but if I say something publicly, I
Oh,
would.
no, I'm not questioning, I'm just saying, like, if there's cynics out there like that are.
Where are these hypothetical mustache twirling villains that are going to like say that they're gonna raise the budget by 6 million and then raise it by 11? I mean, that is it's none of those people are gonna get reelected to town meeting or select board, certainly not. You know, they're not so bad in mind.
Just one last comment. Thank you, Sharon, that table that you had that describes specifically where the structure deficit is. I think that's one of the things that probably needs to be published somewhere. So folks can really see, you can actually see where the deficit is, and most of it is retirement and health insurance. That's like $5 million right there.
It's almost
Which are those costs I don't think you can control. For the retirement, there is ways, but for example, Endo, they borrow, and they borrow for their, they borrow like 300 million. Okay. Would I suggest that not to be done?
Yeah.
But there is ways that you can stabilize payment, they just stabilize your payments, but it's the same amount of money that you're paying out. Health insurance on the other side, I don't think you get the money.
Yeah, just a follow-up comment on that, I guess I'm not wondering, like, what is wrong with the pension obligation bond when borrowing rates are lower than the discount rate? So if you want to replace based on KMS's 2025, we owe $50 million fiscal 28 to 32. If we were to bring that down to the present value of today's, if we were to hand the retirement board the money the next time we issue debt, wouldn't that be less to just pay debt service at 3.5%, 4%?
Yeah, but if they invest that money and they lose a ton of money, that's where the exposure is, because then they're going to.
Right, but you'd be satisfying your obligation closer than having to make an $11.4 million payment in 2032.
Not a lot of communities go that direction because it is risky, because you're putting the money, they put the money in the stock market, they're putting the.
Yeah, they're putting
risky
it in
investment.
credit, like they're gonna do anyways, but
Yes,
the sooner you
exactly,
give them
I
money,
mean,
the
there
more
are,
it compounds.
but there's we have significant costs,
Right.
you know, it averages out to about 8.5%. Yeah, return every year, but there are years that the rates go down by 12.
Right, that's why it's smooth,
It
so
moves, but I do feel like it's risky and a lot of people.
have we done the math? Thanks, the question.
I've done.
He was our treasurer.
I get it, so if you replace $50 million in payments in the next 7
So
years,
the only thing
that's
that
what
does,
it's paying.
at least in the only, and I will use very numbers. The
Yeah.
only thing that does it will lower your payments by 1.2 million per year, okay? Look, your payments, like, think of it as your mortgage payments, okay?
Yeah, I get it.
So, once you do that, the risk associated with it is not even worth it. Because what happens, we have seen years where the pre-balances have gone down, it's just stock market. Right, it's very exposed to the stock market. But the problem is that you are, because it's retirement, you are obligated to pay for it. You're obligated. So then the question becomes is, what happens if you cannot meet your retirement contribution? What happens? You leave the people that need it the most, can't pay them. What will happen? So there's a few things that go with it. Andover is a case study. I've looked into it. Brockton has done it also. Quincy, Massachusetts has done it. I've looked into it. We are so close on being fully funded, as long as it doesn't move away, because it's a moving target. We were at 2029. Now we are 32.
We dropped our discount rate
So-
from 7 to 6.75.
The borrowing rate is still lower than the discount
So
rate, correct?
the way that I've
Exactly, but
seen,
we're still on the hook. If they lose the money, we think
Yeah.
we're
Oh, I
fully funded,
know.
we're still on the hook. So if they lose a good percentage of it, now they're gonna start giving us another assessment and we're paying the debt service.
But you would have to pay it anyways, right?
Yeah,
it's mandated by the state, yes. So the only thing is that you're gaining is that,
Interest rate arbitrage, right? I understand.
yeah, the payment, so you're paying, for example, 7 million in FY 26.
Right.
If you had borrowed it, you would probably pay the debt service on $100 million, whatever, 200 million.
Yeah, we have to make $50 million in payments for the
Yeah,
next
it will be,
5 years, last 5
it will
years.
be about 6 million. So you're only saving like $1 million a year. That's all you save.
Only a year, right?
Yeah, but that's all you save. You're just,
We're so close to being
you're paying
fully
interest. Then you're paying the interest
I
on
hear that
that.
we're gonna get another 2027 KMS, and if it doesn't perform, again, our payments are gonna go up again. There's gonna have to be possible pushing it up to the retirement board, of course, the fiduciary duty to that fund. It just seems like, again, Andover did it, other people are doing it because of the rate arbitrage.
There's only like 6, and the rates need to be like, Andover put it at 2.3%. Rates, right now, the rates are like 5, 6 cents still.
That's not.
So what you're saving is just you stabilizing the thing, that's all the same, but the difference between them is not as big as you think. That's the way that I see it. But then again, you're just paying more interest.
I don't see it that way, because again, we take down a general obligation bond at market rates for 6 years, or whatever, to 2032. It is lower than the discount rate, which is basically implied interest. Right? Correct. So it should be in the money. I understand that obviously performance of the fund
It's
over
the
those
actual
6 years
performance, you're putting
is
all
a
that money
risk,
at
but
risk.
we have that money at risk anyways. We still have to make $50 million in payments.
But all I'm saying is that the interest rate that you are paying on that bond for whatever, how many years, it's guaranteed that you're paying, okay? If it's invested, if the market is performing well, you're getting all of that money, you're getting way more money than you would be getting from the debt.
An interesting proposition, and interest rates.
But I'm just wondering if the math, obviously it was the past, don't know what it is today.
No, I looked at it, it's a great, and the other
I'd
thing,
love to see the numbers.
what Andover did, for example, is they inverted. So they did 5 or I think 10 years, they paid like less payments. But then they're just kicking the can down the road.
But you're also tying your debt up. You've got a debt ceiling that we can use to borrow, you'd be tying up. like-
Andover's number was crazy comparatively, but they turned a future liability of close to 550 million to a set number at a lower
Yeah, you
interest
should
rate.
just budget better, but still you have to pay.
And Andover's not had an override since '03, so I'm just saying, obviously, it's something. I'm interested, obviously, because the discount rate and interest rates at the time. We're in a very low interest rate environment, the wind may not last forever for municipalities, again. But we're talking about trying to save $1 million here, $1 million there.
It's definitely something that entertaining, but there is risk involved when you're taking
It's
a bulk
investment
of
risk.
money at a set time and putting it into the stock market.
It is not.
Paying it all at once.
Equity capital, yes.
Oh, well, this is a robust discussion. So we have someone online, and then I think we wanna move on with this. Was it with more of the presentation? Angela, you had your patiently waiting, but your hand up, I think.
Thank you very much, Angela Binda, town meeting member. I have two things to say about this discussion. The first is, I think, Ms. Wellman hit the nail on the head when she said, talking about what people will pay. And I think that you need to look back at what happened at the last override. Follow that, because what happened was that the town asked people what they were willing to pay for an override, and then they padded it. It did not pass. When it went down to the number that they wanted to pay, then it passed. So I think that that is very instructional. And I don't think most people are looking at the huge budget and saying, this is going to get cut, that's not going to get cut. But I think people are looking at their own wallets and saying, I can pay 500, I can pay 800, I can pay 1,000, I can pay 1,500. The next thing I want to say is about the tiered system. I am a municipal employee in a neighboring town, longtime librarian in Stoneham. I know select board members, I followed that, and it was very confusing when they were talking about the tiered system. It was not clear to residents whether or not the town, the town administrator, the select board could override what was ever passed. So even if something was passed, that it would be a certain amount the first year, a certain amount in the second year, a certain amount the third year, it was not clear to the residents whether or not that would actually be enforceable, or whether or not the town administrator or select board could change that. So I think that I like the idea of layering it in. I think that it's something that people need to think about and make sure. What I heard in Stoneham, I looked online and it seems like it is enforceable, although when I was in Stoneham said, no, it's not enforceable. I'm not sure what it is. So I think that if you go with a tiered approach, you need to be very specific whether or not this is what you're voting for, or this could be changed. So anyway, I think that my 2 points are: listen to the residents about what they are willing to pay and what is the timeline in which they want to pay it. I think those are the most important things. I think that we all know what may or may not be cut, but nobody's watching it, following it that closely. But we are looking at what we may or may not be paying in the next couple of years. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Binda. Okay, I think based on my looking at the presentation, there's a couple more important slides, including maybe getting to Ms. Bender's point, what cuts might be made. So if you want to finish your presentation.
Okay, so the reason we want you guys to give us a recommendation, if an override failed, where you would lean towards free cash, because we have to build that budget, kind of strategically think about it well in advance, because we're not gonna know right away. So this is what would happen. At 6.475, which is a number I would not recommend, our budget could go up 1.55%. Our operating budget could go up that much. 6 million, just about 0.79%. All other numbers are, a reduction to the budget. So you can see where that is. There's not one number out there that actually leaves us at level service. So this slide shows the equivalent for positions we would need to cut to stay at a 3.75% budget. So in blue, you can see these ones here. This is how we split the money currently after we take out nominated cost. 63.6% goes to the school and 36.4% goes to the town. And obviously, we understand that, we want to see what are the options in terms of how we split these cuts. If we were to go with a $3 million number, that's 67 positions. If we split it the way we split the money, 43 would be on the school side and 24 would be on the town side. But if we did a 50-50, which nothing's been decided yet, it would be 34-33. Now, down below here, I give you kind of an idea of how many employees are in the town and how many.
Those are FTEs, those are real employees, right?
Those are actual employees. I think even their powers are counted in the system as, a full-time equipment, even though they're not full-time. So they have 623, we have 249. So if we were to go with this option, this $3 million option, the school would see a reduction under the 63.6 option. They would be seeing a 6.9% staff cut if it all had to come from staffing, which I feel like we've been running lean enough that there's probably not a lot of expenses that they can cut at this point. So I just wanted to kind of put it in perspective of positions. There may be some things that we can do to bring these numbers down a little bit. So if we were to do the 63.6, the way we actually split the money, that would be a 6.9% cut for the school. If we do 50-50 at that range, it would be a 5.5% cut in staffing. For the town side, because there's less employees, if we split it to 36.4, the way we split the money, that would be a 9.6% staff reduction. And then if we did 50-50, it'd be a 13.3% reduction in staff. And overall, it's a 7.7% reduction in staff. Those are large enough cuts that they will be felt across the community. There's just no way that your services would not be impacted by that level of a cut. But at this point, I can't see us recommending using half of our free cash to be up at the top. And we really do need to start. We've exhausted all our excess reserves. We really don't have the excess reserves to be looking at one of these bigger numbers. I think we do need to be down at the bottom. That's just my opinion. It's not up to me. But I wanted to make sure it's clear kind of if everything that needs to be cut after this is from staffing, this is the number of positions we're looking at, and it's a pretty scary number. That is all I have on there. Leave it up. Oh, another thing I didn't mention is the one thing that we noticed is that on the town side, the average employee is about 85,000 and 15,000 for benefits. So that was where we got 100,000 for what we did here. And what we discovered in talking to the school department, their average salary is about 100. But the benefit side does show up on the town side. That's where it's absorbed. But there is a little bit of a difference there, but we just kind of generally see positions of 100,000. So if they're cutting positions that are making less than that, you're looking at more cuts, and that's important to note. Like they're cutting somebody who's 50,000. And the other thing we discovered through this process of sitting with the school department is we really needed to bulk up our unemployment number because municipalities are self-insured for unemployment. So a person on unemployment, the most they can get is like a certain amount, and for 30 weeks, so that's about $33,150 per person you lay off if you have exposure there. What I had done was I added 35,000 times 55 people. So the more unemployment I put, the more positions I have to lay off. So it's like that you're chasing a target, and I'm trying to be conservative, but there's another option there. There's an option of saying, hey, let's agree that this unemployment thing is going to be a problem. Maybe we agree on a number that's lower, because I think I added almost $2 million to the unemployment number for 55 people to be able to collect for 30 weeks. Maybe we make that number more like $1 million and agree that we would cover it with free cash if it comes in higher, so that we reduce some of the staffing. So there are still some triggers that we can pull, but it would be irresponsible of us not to try and put something in there, because we know that we are going to get, if you're actually actively laying off, you are going to have some people collecting unemployment for some period of time. And so we do have to have something. The number I put in here is maybe a high number for 30 weeks. Maybe it might be realistic, who knows? But I put into this number that you're seeing for the 30 million at 55 positions at 35,000. So hopefully that's a high number, and that's maybe something we could work down to try and bring the positions down. If we can agree on, putting a good baseline number there, that might be a little bit more realistic. Maybe not all of these people would be on it for 30 weeks is kind of the point that Alex had made to us. So that's a conversation to have too, but keep that in mind when you're looking at that. I had to increase our unemployment dramatically to account for this level of labor.
We don't have many contracts that have like severance agreements beyond unemployment.
The town site, the only contract we have is the town manager, right? So there's no contract other than bargaining stuff. Yeah, nobody's under contract. It's 28.
Speaking of contract, there's not places where instead of having employees, it would be cheaper for us to hire contractors that we don't have to pay benefits to. Or has that already been done where we can't? I know.
We have a lot of maintenance contracts with facilities department to do a lot of that kind of work. Exactly.
So that's where that goes.
And that's why we've been able to get away with 4 maintenance people for over $1 million.
Yeah, well, I know like the high school at Coolidge, you're on a maintenance contract, though that had, so I don't look at the school budget, that had gone up. I know that's not your budget, but. And if in a no override scenario, is like selling the Pleasant Street Center on the table at all, or no? I know that's kind of the select board's decision, but.
That's a great question.
When you're desperate, and you need money.
Maintenance of the Pleasant Street Center is not included.
So there's, oh, really?
No, we've increased those related budgets to fund recap.
But if we still have it, we have to do something or sell it, I guess. Yeah, we can't just let it.
That's work that's ongoing.
Yeah.
Are you sure? I thought he did keep his line. Yeah.
Maybe, I could be wrong. I could probably.
But if it's unoccupied, I would hope we wouldn't be spending as much to heat it and all this stuff.
No,
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be paying.
If it's unoccupied, it costs more money, sure. So,
I didn't know that, but in general, like I'd say, heating and that stuff, nobody's in there, you don't want the pipes to freeze in the winter.
You don't wanna have the value of your property destroyed if you eventually wanna sell it.
Exactly.
That's just a.
Yeah,
No, we can't, it's only like a short-term fix.
The timeline is ideally to have either a renter or a buyer sorted out by about the time we open recap.
Yeah.
So, if not before, so they get
I jumped in here, but I wanna ask the committee if they have any comments on these last couple of slides or thoughts.
Those numbers are scary, but that would be probably either 3 or 4, and even those are kind of valuable.
Sure, what's the regeneration assumption?
This isn't assuming any regeneration, this is looking at our current estimate of free cash. Like, this is just saying, like, if every person's worth $100,000, we've got to cut this much money from the budget, that's what we're looking at.
Regeneration doesn't affect this, regeneration affects what will free cash balance be after this. And so, which we care about, because we don't want that number.
We do care, but I don't think that's a number that you can come up with right now. I mean, I will say that I do believe that fiscal 28 will have a lot of regeneration simply because I had to build a full year of cost in both the new buildings. So utilities and the 4 new employees that would be hired. They may not be here the whole year, but in order to have a good baseline, if you're gonna go for an override, you wanna have those costs fully loaded for a whole year, so that you're not trying to next year add in the difference. Oh, I put in 25%, now next year I gotta add 75% more. Like, if you're gonna go for an override, you wanna have those buildings covered at 100%, even though they're not gonna be probably expended at that. So
So
there is
Salem
some.
doesn't come online till February.
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna be there the entire year, but they're budgeted as if they were. And that piece of it does tell you that there's a fair amount of regeneration that will come back to us. It just, the number is a little unknown, not knowing exactly the date everything goes.
Okay, well, we have, I'm sorry, did anyone have anything else to say?
I mean, are we discussing our free cash usage recommendations?
I guess that's what we're getting to, kind of leading to maybe a recommended override amount / free cash usage. We can take a straw poll, not binding or non-binding vote, but a representation of how we feel.
I will say, I'm scrolling through the captions of our last meeting and I see where the misunderstanding was between me and Jane about what we should be discussing in this meeting. And so I will take responsibility for that. Hour and 26 minutes, watch yourself. But anyway.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So yeah, that's where you said, I want to know how much where I said, do you want a recommendation on override amount? And you said, I want a recommendation on free cash. And except that's not what I heard. So
This
I see
meeting's
it now. I
good.
see it now. I see it now. So
We can still take a
Yeah,
recommendation. By recommending an override amount, so I guess if we start looking, do we want to look at the red sheet or does anyone have another proposal like in between the two? Based on, I don't know if a couple of slides back had the different,
This one.
yeah, that one with the green, I know it's tiered, but it also kind of gives us a few amounts. So,
This one here.
yeah. I mean, this is more amounts than what's on this, it doesn't just go from 6.5 to 11, it has in between them.
Is this what the select board discussed?
No, I'm just giving to you examples so you can see kind of what an impact would be if we did something spread over.
This- The select board, some of the members expressed an interest in what this would look like. And so I asked Sharon to make the slide, and build it out, and I like how she gave some options here, so. This gives a pretty good baseline, could go, in different directions.
Especially with there's things that were requested we could not fund with the 6.5.
Yeah, and I think, to the point Ms. Binda made, knowing what the public's willing to pay is a factor. I don't know if we know that. And I think also with the last override, making it real by like people saying, oh, we're gonna cut middle school language and we're gonna cut these things, that we had the advocacy group, the Yes for Running, that got people interested too, but there was also. So do we have an idea of what we think people would be willing to pay? I think Ms. Bender threw out like 500. We know, 800, 900 or so, and that can go down. It's coming on from recalculum. So we're adding on top of that. So do we think not another 1,000? Do we have an idea that is in? Does anyone have any thoughts? I might just take straw polls in some of these amounts. I'm not sure what to do.
Or do you want to look at this one where you can see all of the impacts?
Okay, yeah, maybe
That
that's, maybe
I mean,
that's.
that one there is just showing spreading it out, but the numbers would have to be the same.
The total
strategies
ends up being the same either way.
Well, the total, take all that number and then add in what would come on from recal and kill them, because we have to.
But I think that recal and Killam was, for the average taxpayer was about $1,000 between both of them with the fully loaded budgets that are coming in lower. So I'm expecting that second tranche of debt to come in lower. But I did borrow like 60% of what the original budget was for both, so.
So I see that 568 in the first tranche. I don't know if we round that up, but for all of those numbers, I feel like I want to add 600 or 700 and then say, can someone tolerate that? Yeah, so I definitely feel like 12 and over is out of the league right now, but I don't know.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add to your conversation that, the select board is also split right now in their conversations on, is it one number or two numbers? So I think it'd be helpful if finance committee had an opinion and maybe you
What
don't.
do you mean by one number and two numbers?
Is there a tiered presentation? Are we offering residents a higher number and a low number, or are we offering them
Yeah,
one?
like Stone did last time, give a higher number, lower number, whoever gets the most votes, as long as it's over 50%,
That's right.
wins.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Melrose-
did Melrose do three
No.
tiers?
They did
Yeah.
3, Marblehead did 3.
Yeah, as long as it's.
Did they all pass?
Marblehead,
Marblehead passed.
No, Marblehead passed at the, there's like.
Mid-level.
Mid-level?
Mid-level?
Someone told me it was
Melrose-
top level.
Maybe I'm wrong. Melrose passed at the high level. Stoneham passed at the lower. So, it just, I think it gives voters choice and more control, and I think empowering voters is important. Would be my opinion.
I think they passed 15 million with 54.3%, which is their top two.
Marblehead, oh, they did,
Marblehead,
okay.
15.
I thought they passed.
Yeah,
Marblehead.
that's like the first time possibly ever for them, it was some historical amount, and obviously this was the last.
And Winchester failed at some number, which was like 11 million or something.
It's just so right here. They weren't like, oh my God, we're gonna have to fire a bunch of cops and teachers if we don't do this.
It's all teams.
And if you don't, right, and if you don't say it, right, then
Right,
I
and I
wouldn't
think that
vote it.
they're,
That wasn't.
I think Melrose and Stoneham are better
Yeah, those are more-
comparisons to us than Winchester.
I think Winchester is one of our leaders, so.
Oh, we did well, okay, so.
And their
our
property
peer
values
community
are just so much higher.
They are,
They're bringing in a lot more.
but they also had override more recently.
They've had so many.
I think they had one in
They have
2020,
like one
so
every.
it was like 6 years ago.
Because they're comparable.
And they got 10 million.
Residentially, they may be more residential as we are in terms of like the commercial part. Melrose is as well, Stoneham is a little bit more commercial. All right, so trying to think, all right, can we take a vote tiered or I'm just curious whether we don't have to decide on the tiered, but do we like tiers or do we want a single amount? Who wants? Go ahead, John.
Tiers is as in, well, it comes in over time or
No,
two
two
different
options, multiple options.
Multiple options, we'll call it multiple.
This side.
So I guess, yeah, I'm sorry.
You know, she was.
Multiple options with tier, so I guess maybe to be clear, how many of us like, I'm just curious, how many of us like multiple options? So, and how many of us want a single option?
I do, too, my comment on that is, I understand the attraction of a tier because, not to call it a marketing gimmick, but usually you put a higher number that's aspirational, people say absolutely not, and the number below it's that feels comfortable. So I think it's a higher likelihood of passage, but I don't know if the select board will feel that way. The 3 out of 5 want to do that this close because some feel we are rushing into this. So I don't know if it even makes.
No, I heard that, this is all very hard to do by November, go ahead.
So can I say my perspective as a voter? Doesn't matter how many tiers, if I cannot afford, I'm gonna vote no. So regardless of how many tiers you have, people that cannot afford will just vote no.
I'm just concerned that we don't have a lot of time to educate people. People are just gonna go for the lower one, based on the current environment for a lot of people, so.
You also have the benefit of the second bite of the apple in spring, not ideal, but we're all aware of that as well, as God forbid if both failed, or the only one we present failed, we have time to tune up these numbers and reapproach in spring with a more targeted number, which I assume would be lower than all of these, which still may lead to cuts of some kind, but it may not be as dramatic as.
So I guess with the tiers, say the lowest tier passed it and we don't like it, we're not gonna come back with
No,
another
no,
option.
I'm saying both were to fail, like Stone failed the first time.
Right, but
I mean, we put
Stoneham's
eight-
Stoneham's first one was like 14 point something,
I think it was
tier.
You know, if hypothetically, if they were to put 11 and 8, I don't think both of those numbers pass. They both fail, and then you have to go back to the voters with probably the likely winner for the beginning, 6.5 in the spring, which again, to the average voter will say, well, I couldn't afford 1,200, really don't want to pay 800, but I can stomach 550, whatever.
So we could put that option up front too.
Again, it's gonna be lower turnout in general if it's a spring election, however, obviously, it's going to be better turnout than in the fall with CPA.
Okay.
I mean, this is, so okay, so the timing of the thing is not on our agenda.
No, but
I have opinions, and especially related to like when things are more likely to pass and which sort of things are more likely to pass in a high turnout election versus low one. And for that matter, how national politics affects turnout and the nature of the turnout. But that's on the agenda, so I should shut up.
well, the thing is, no, if we're recommending an amount, we're recommending an amount for one election, right? We're not recommending an amount for the spring elections. select board, we could recommend an amount, and select board could punt it and say, no, we're not putting it on. So,
Which again is what's process a little
I know,
because, you know, the select board's prerogative as executive to put it on. I think we should be evaluating after they decide, but we're kind of flipping it and trying to give them recommendations, but at the end of the day, it's ultimately their decision.
so we've kind of favored a tiered approach, we can just come out with what we think.
Yeah.
So now we get to, okay, do we want 2 tiers, do we want 3 tiers? Like. Do we think it's too confusing? Are we thinking like the marketing that, oh, people might go for the middle 3 seems like a lot? 2,
Madam Chair,
yes?
and since you guys are discussing this, I just wanted to let you know that, I just wanted to remind you all that at town meeting, we also voted to put, the CPA on the ballot in November.
Some of us did not vote for that.
Yeah, well,
Yes, I
town
know.
meeting as a body voted for it, and I
No,
forgot.
it's there.
But it adds, I think it adds complexity to the ballot, and so we did talk about it, and I just wanted to make sure you guys were consistent and knew that.
Yeah, that's not on our agenda and we kind of know, I think it's $90 to $100 and.
Well, you don't need to discuss it, but if you pick 3 options, understand it's 3 options plus CPA to figure out versus 1 option in CPA versus 2 options in CPA versus apparently our town clerk said that we could have a town meeting and change the CPA ballot. So
Yeah,
wanted to make
that's, and that costs the town money too. That's why some of us thought CPA was premature, but let's get back to, so I think we think maybe 2 options, but I don't know if these 2 best options. Go ahead.
So first thing I want to say is that my preference for 2 options versus 1 is not strong. I mean, it's based on the idea that, you know, actually, in part of it is a reaction to the fact that the timeline that because it's like we're to not bring this forward any sooner, talking about we've got, you know, 4 or 5 months to do this basically. This does give the voters some input in a way that we couldn't solicit it from them. You know,
It may be that this is a straw poll, if this ends up being a poll of the voters, what they'll take, I don't know, like maybe, like say we put 6.5 and 11, 6.5 and 10, and neither one passed. Now we have a baseline of, okay, we have to go lower and use more free cash.
yes, I am confused at the, well, I find some people are very sure that this is doomed and some people are not. So I'm not so sure that anyone should be so sure. But this.
So can I make this first recommendation?
Yeah.
Based on what I personally think it's an option. And this is to Chris's point too. I would go with the option the first option at 7.5 million and free cash use of 2 million. And then the higher option of 11 million with no free cash use at all. So that will be, and then it gets into a conversation if we're gonna smooth it out for 3 years or not, right? That doesn't have to be on ballot, does it?
No, we wouldn't put it on.
So that's a new point then, that's just, so, and.
Well, it's moved for now.
To his point, if we have to be realistic here, if it fails, okay, and you have to go back to the voters, you're gonna go with another amount.
And the
other amount is 6.5 million.
The other thing you just said too, pertinent to the CPA, the difference between 6.5 and 7.5 is almost the amount of the CPA.
Correct.
Like I'm trying to doom CPA, but some people, and it was my thought, if I have to pay an extra $100, I'd rather have it keep teachers than fund more playgrounds. And I love playgrounds, but people might make a preference, and that's just me. But people might want to say, I want my extra 100 to go where the town needs it most, not for some limited options. Or people might say, no, I want CPA and I'll pay less, I don't know.
And then on the state match.
What?
You want a little bit that the state kicks in to match
Yeah.
on your CP.
Yeah, but
It was nice to see when it came first, but now
Okay, but well, Andrea, does anyone?
Those are just.
No, that's a good proposal, I guess
Start off and then
I'm
we
wondering,
can,
what's the free cash usage of 10 million? 10 million just sounds better than 11, but that's still some free cash.
How about 11.9 and 10.9?
So, yeah, I mean, I
10.9.
so. My thoughts, so 11, so going to a regime of no free cash usage when we know we're going to have regeneration, in fact, we know it's probably going to be more in FY '28. And we are spending on capital in the operating budget, which is what other towns spend in free cash on. That seems excessive. That seems like we are taxing people and just putting money in free cash for no reason.
And then people did resent, oh, this free cash, how did it grow to 19 million? I know it was COVID and other
Right,
things,
yes.
but people got,
Right.
like, why am I
That
paying
time
so
wasn't
much?
our fault.
Yeah.
This time I think it would be if we went straight for
And
11.
no one wants to see it
So-
grow, but then we need that 15 to 20% for borrowing, that people have to
Yeah,
understand.
well, the borrowing question, it's funny, I mean, I'm hearing, so I understand Sharon saying that like 7% might not cut it for AAA, but I've also heard other people asking, and I share the question of like, well, okay, but like, how much is it really worth, like, to, you know, to be AAA versus whatever, AA plus and so forth. That, you know, missing 15 might cost us AAA, but also costing us AAA, but it's not the end of the world. It's kind of both of those things are pushing in both directions. Yeah, I'd be okay with a higher tier, but only with the expectation we would be using free cash and we would be rolling it in gradually. Something like the other slide that we were looking at a minute ago.
So then the upper level, you're thinking could be lower than 11, using a little free cash.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the upper level is, I would want to see, I mean, I think actually. I wish I
Look
could
at
understand.
like a $200 difference, 7.5 million, right? If we started that, then $200 more is about, it's between 9 and 10 million, right?
Yeah.
Like 7.5 and 9.5.
If I were to comment, in theory, I agree with Joe's point. I mean, there are some people that are trying to get away from free cash use at all, but the cost of regeneration supports using free cash for hard capital assets we can touch. I was actually willing to support a free cash use that almost matched funds the CIP as long as it's supported by regeneration and we meet the minimum. Obviously, I was based on the 7%. Sounds like our guidance should probably be up to closer to 10. I also think we should be moving the extra interest we're getting in stabilization. It'd be a lot easier if our stabilization was closer to 5, so we basically never hit our minimum. That'd be great. But if you look at the green, yellow, red, if you were to basically say $3 million cash use across the board, now it's just 8, 7, 6. Now you crunch that down all the way to just the top 3. Now you're basically telling people we could save everything by using free cash responsibly. We're not going to use the overriding budget. The highest number we'll need is 8 million. It's 906. So if you were to sell it, if you were to tier it, you would say if you want everything to stay the same, if you want more firefighters, more cops, if you want to keep your weekly recycling, we're going to use 3 million in free cash, and we're going to do an override for 8 million, and hopefully it gets us to fiscal 32. And the second tier is a lower number. That's 6.5. 7.5, maybe 7.
7.5 and 8, we're not gonna have those two tiers. They have
Yeah,
to-
no, 6.5.
7, you know what 7 includes? Weekly recycling. So it's a kind of massaging the numbers, but if you want to
Yeah.
have that, I mean, that's a lot of scary numbers. But if we're not even really considering anything over 8, then I wouldn't present it. If we were to, I say, agree, recommend, because obviously the decision doesn't happen until spring, that we as a board are willing to consider using a number of free cash that's basically a match peg to CIP spending. Whether it's 100% coverage, 80% coverage, or some other. I certainly feel comfortable as long as the generation continues. I believe the draft number we saw was 4.9, but as Sharon explained to me, 2.5, I don't want to hold you to it, is extra interest because of rates currently, and rates are probably going to keep staying higher. So we're probably going to keep having investment income way above budget, and I believe that money should be sought in a stabilization. So those are my multiple cents.
Yeah, anyone else? Good.
I just add on the realm of like, what's the voters' appetite? Everyone I've talked to so far is like, if the override is gonna give me what I'm getting, that's great. But the minute you start adding stuff I have a problem with it. And so I think, I agree, if we say, 7, it's 8, we use three in free cash to balance, but we're like, oh, well, this gets you this, gets you what you have, plus we're adding 4 new firefighters, right? 3 new police.
Yeah, people don't,
Right.
I can take that, that's 1.2 million, I don't have to have that.
Right, so I think the minute you
You're
start
talking
saying this is
about
to
number.
add to what we have, where instead of the messaging of if we don't do this, we lose, right? I think people see the need to have before the nice to have, and
That's the thing, though, most of our have something that you're getting for voting over it. We have a structural deficit, they're just filling a gap, they're not actually getting.
People
anything
understand
that are-
inflation that we might not be getting. We already bought something new, got a new school and a new building. You spent your money, party's over, now we just.
now we're gonna snap it and keep it and enjoy it and use it, so.
So I'm starting to say maybe we just propose 8 million. I don't know.
And the 8 million, the other part of that is it will last, like we had that discipline that we're talking about, it could be cash and capital, it's gonna last longer. It gets us closer than FY 30.
So it's not, maybe Chris, you convinced me to back away between the other
Yeah.
things to back. Does anyone else?
I just think that
Have a
that's,
turn of mind that.
that seems to be the biggest,
Do it right way.
right, I know we're not voting, can't, about
And
free
it's
cash
under
use.
1,000, it's like that mental number of going.
Well,
forward.
and again, that can change, again, there's so many variables, the calculator can be
Right,
updated,
right
we have some
now,
time
it's
until November, but to guide the select board if they're looking for guidance, to be honest with you, might not, just say,
Yeah.
do anything, but, I personally, not voting, am comfortable with using a number of free cash to help guide them to, work hard.
Yeah.
And that vote technically won't happen until the fall and spring, and by then we'll know what happens in November, we'll know what happens in fall.
So this is starting to get me away from having 2 tiers maybe,
Yeah.
so we all, so I'm gonna, anyone wanna make a, go ahead?
Just, if I see 8 million, I just look at 8 million, there's no other option, I'm just gonna vote no. With the hope that it's gonna be a lesser number next time.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, if we paired it, would we pair 8 with 6.5 or something? Would that?
That was, I kind of, I like this is what Chris was saying a second ago, of like, there's a 8 plus 3 million free cash is the no cuts option, or maybe we make it, actually, this is the thing.
Yeah, dare I say, Jane, if you were to pick on firefighters or cops, but if there was, we're not adding anything, we're simply keeping it the way
Yeah.
everything's great, including recycling, we're very happy about, is that number 9.3 or whatever it is, and then if you have free cash. This is more for the benefit of the select board, obviously,
No, where, I'm not following you, so take me through.
So there's obviously a big gap between 6.5 and 11.
There
So
is, yeah.
if you were to say, again, when people see we're adding firefighters, adding police.
Yep.
By the way, it is there to
No,
reduce
those can
OT.
come up.
If that comes out, then what is that number?
You
Become-
think that's 1.2 million, right? So if you backed off 1.2 million from 11 million, it's 9.8.
Yeah.
And that's what your structural deficit, so it's 9.8, you're override for New York City. So the idea is
right there, it's just not.
your 11 million, so it's 9.8 million. And with no free cash support, you restored financial. So that's what that.
And the question becomes, how long is that number?
You think that
9.8
number will last
would
longer?
recover things, and then we would have to start using free cash again.
Right, but again, we'd be using it at a rate that is actually in line with regeneration. Which,
Yeah.
and we would be using it, I love the tying it to the capital spending as a policy. When we get to future agendas, I'm gonna be excited about that.
Okay, so could we, if we go, so we were thinking away from tiers, but we wanted to give people an option, if we said 9.8 and 7.8, because then 7.8 is almost 8. But they're still separated by 2 million, or, I don't know.
Where did 9.8 come from?
I was just delta-ing back from.
That's your is the structural.
Yeah.
That's the exact structural deficit.
That's the exact amount of free cash.
All right.
And I guess it's under 10 too, so.
Okay, all right.
It's
I see
under
what you
10, but the impact on the bill is still not enough for 1,000.
All right, but I
And
mean,
then 7.8 gets us closer to what we really want of the 8.
yeah, or I mean, even,
Chair, 9.8 free cash will increase though.
I'm sorry?
At 9.8 free cash will increase.
That's covers the
You
structural
just
deficit.
ask Sharon
Let me
to
show you
predict more than
something.
3 million retail
Let me
rates.
show you
She
something that
refuses
might
to do it
help.
no matter how many times you ask her.
No, but she's already said
She has said,
568.
right, she has.
So.
Right.
We
don't need 9.8 right away. I want to see if I can show you something that will help you understand it better.
You're right, that's, I mean, that's still, okay, but 9.8 and.
I think, Marianne, if we had, God forbid, a fourth tier, that was like. And that's at 9.8, and then I accounted for using 3 million, now it's only 6. Okay, but that's the number, but again, if you're not, some people are sensitive about adding staff.
Yeah.
Right.
The 9.8 assumes 3 million free cash.
No,
That's
no,
what-
no,
Okay.
that's
That's what it
assumes not-
says.
I'm
in-
showing,
No, no,
you,
no,
I'm showing you the financial forecast, just so you can see, okay, this is where we started off with a 3.75% budget, which is.
I'm gonna need 9.8.
Okay, let me just show you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is,
Show, the laser, well, let me do the laser, it's not PowerPoint, okay.
So I get it.
So
See, it makes sense, but
this is what
It's
we
taken away
started off
that.
with, it was 3.75 with community priorities added in. Or the additional costs related to the new buildings, or the community priority to get the school to where they need to be. And I think we have another community priority in there for $60,000 because we cut a cruiser last year.
So 3.75 is the yellow on this, the middle.
The 3.75 is right here.
Oh, no, I just meant like it corresponds to what the yellow,
Exactly,
the
yellow.
yellow, yes, okay.
Now, the structural deficit is 9.8 million for that budget, but we are assuming that we're going to still use some free cash, which is how we got to the 6.5. We're gonna use $3 million of free cash. And then if you remember, Jane said she would still want to restructure a little bit on the town side and eliminate some positions or, you know, have some cuts still within the town budget to make that 6.5 a more digestible number, because I feel like the lower we get this number, the more likely that people will be able to say yes to it. So the structural deficit here is 9.8, but we are still planning to use free cash to bring that number down. But when you look at how that number grows with the assumptions we have in here, it's mind-boggling. That's where the 14 comes in. But if we were to continue to say, I were willing to put $2.5 million at all times, this 11.7 is where we'd be at, you know, fiscal 32. If
When
everything.
we get our 3 million back. Maybe.
Right. The one thing I will say is that in these assumptions, our assumptions, as I said, for benefits being at 10% for a couple years and then going down to 8, 7. And if those things come in lower, that really helps our budget and helps us that money last longer. But right now, I don't know anything different than what the Maya is telling us. They're telling us go with double digits right now. And so that 9.8 we know to be real, but everything in the future has got assumptions into it that could be better than what I'm saying. I tend to be conservative because I'm asking them and they're not giving me good numbers, and I'm going to use what they tell me because I know nothing different.
Well, they're better than we can fix our stabilization fund like we're talking.
Exactly. So that this is where the number starts, is this 9.8, and how much willingness we already use free cash. Now, in the entire time I've been here, 14 years, there has not been 1 year that we have not regenerated $3 million. So I do think 3 million is a safe number. I think the last couple of years we're closer to make that $4.8 million. So we would still be building free cash, you're bringing up free cash to bring up to that 15% that we're after. So that's kind of how we got to the 6.5, is assuming that we would be continuing to use some baseline level of free cash, kind of tied to the capital as we talked about. This budget here at 3.75 has almost $4 million of capital in it. 3,989,000 is in that budget right now. So we could use up to that if we wanted to kind of make that our new policy in this particular one. But we kind of defaulted to 3 because I know 3 is regeneratable and we would start to rebuild some of what we've put in out of our reserves. So I think we fell at 3 for that reason, because I know that we'll regenerate and start to rebuild back to that 15% we're looking for, but also it is tied very closely to capital.
So I am definitely more confused now, because this talks about 6.5 million plus 3 to 3.3 million in free cash usage, plus a lot of cuts.
You
mean,
see-
so relative to, well, but like, these are not this is
Some
not.
of them are just not increasing as much, like the seniors are still
Yeah.
getting
The
money.
only cuts that are on the yellow are the taking out the recycling. We weren't able to keep that in.
Okay.
At
Well,
the
there's some staffing, there's some
Yeah,
staffing.
but so you
cuts.
talk about
And
cutting
then
3 to 5
we're increasing.
positions, that's $500,000.
Three to five positions is not 60 positions.
No, well, of course, but I'm just trying to figure out like the math's
I
not
think
mathing
there's
for
3
me.
to 5, so she's expecting 3 to 5 positions to be about $300,000 savings. You bring that down to 9.5, then you take $3 million away from it, and that's how you get to 6.5. So she's expecting if she has to cut 2 or 3 positions, because she isn't done restructuring, as being the new town manager, she would be doing that exercise in her first year. If she was to cut 300,000 from this budget, that would go down to 9.5, use $3 million, and that's how we got to the 6.
So what's partial about partial restoration of services? The 3 to 5 positions. And the
It's like,
recycling.
like when you're putting back rodent mitigation, it's like all the things you're completely taking away, we're putting back part of it.
But not, I mean. Not everyone.
But the schools do get their
But
full
it
community
also,
priority, which
just
is.
get rid of your structural. cuts. Your 6.5 does not bring you back, financial health every time.
We still need.
You're still gonna have you still require free cash, and you're going, that number will still increase out over time. So that's, maybe we don't call it partial
Mismatch
restoration.
here, okay, so I've been, Mark's questions about regeneration have gone nowhere until now, but now they're what I'm thinking about, because to me, if we regenerate at least $3 million a year, and we need $9.8 million to balance the budget, that's a $6.8 million structural deficit. Because.
Next year.
Well, yeah,
yes. but we're
So,
building
yeah,
in
so James, for
continued inflation.
disclosure, I understand people on this committee knows that's a plug. But for a disclosure, it'd be a lot easier to visualize as a typical person. If we were to change that line to free cash for articles and say 3 million across, then the next one says structural deficit of 6 and then 8 and then 9. It's a lot clearer for people to understand.
You mean
That's
showing the
deficit.
deficit on the negative deficit?
Distinguishing,
I mean,
yes.
it's generally, we don't normally, people don't.
But I
they
don't think a
know
lot
the
of
deficit.
residents maybe go.
This is where
this
that,
laser,
this is
but-
where that would be, like if I were to change this.
Yeah,
on
be at the
paper,
end, but.
But if I were to put that here, if you would
Because
see it down here.
When I
nobody
read
looks
that,
at
if
line.
I wasn't a FinCom member, I go, I don't see the problem. The balances, says they're using free cash.
Yeah, but there's a
No,
lot of free cash.
But they don't know that it's.
They don't know that we don't
have that.
Yes, yeah.
Shortage
No, I
in
get it,
tax
I get it.
Yes.
revenues.
Yeah.
There's gotta be a disclosure to sit in red. Red means danger, but if we're gonna not say commit, we're not gonna vote. There's an assumption we're using 3 million in free cash for capital. It's very clear that it's tangible. And there's a structural deficit. If that is clear to voters, that it's 6.8 or 6.5, and then as the years
If
go
I
on.
put
it
3 million in
increases.
here, this is where they'll see
Yeah.
it,
Just scroll down a little bit.
right here.
Yes, yes, red.
That's where
Keep
they'll
that
see it.
red.
The problem is that most people don't know our financial forecast that well, and they wouldn't look for this number.
If we were to mark it and make this a little more.
When I show
palatable,
it, like, when I'm showing how much free cash is needed, I'm trying to tell them, this is how much I need to make this balance.
Right, but
This is
they don't know
a
that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's.
The marketing the information.
This is our financial.
Isn't, hasn't happened.
Yes, okay.
You know, you asked for a
This is-
table to kind of look to rationally
Just like that,
what's
yeah.
happening. This is not what the town's putting out, and it's not what a pro ballot committee group or an anti-ballot committee group would put out. I like your ideas. We will
Definitely,
talk some more.
Someone knew
about that when we
before
get
I
to the
became
committee.
involved and I read that, I looked at this as we have a balanced budget for 5 years. But I also don't know what the balance of free cash is because it's not on there. It's a separate thing.
Yep.
The average taxpayer must think, well, if they're gonna put it there, they must think it's mean they have it. But we don't.
Yeah.
And we know
We
that.
do have it, but it's more than,
Well,
it's more
in
than.
year 2030, I don't think we do,
No, it'll be gone if we don't
Gone.
pass an override.
especially if we have minimum reserves.
We had some
Probably should have.
versions of this spreadsheet where the free cash was like down to nothing.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
to
no,
balance
any-
my budget, but I like.
That's a cool.
I get that, but I mean, understanding is that we
Maybe
don't.
not in this.
Maybe it needs to say free cash remaining, and then like free cash used, free cash remaining. I don't know.
But I'm not worried about that. We'll get that.
Yeah,
we get
that's
it.
All right, so we want to move on. Let's try, so do we back to tiers or a single amount? We're going all over the place. We come up with something.
Chris, wasn't yours suggested 9, 8, and 6, 8?
I think it's probably gonna be Again,
I think Henry wanted a lower option and you said 8.
if there was 8 was the highest option, and if there would be a lower option, I think it's gonna be either 6.5 or 7. I'm not experiencing preference, but that's under the assumption that, gonna use some sort of free cash, to do that, so. Obviously, I think 11 is not.
No, 11
likely,
will be
not gonna happen.
there.
So, as again.
Unless,
focus on
unless we wanna
government noise
spare
and
people down
focus
to
on-
8 from 11.
Yeah, but I'm not, we're, you want us, sorry.
Yeah.
Not doing it.
So. I like the idea of having people feel like they have some agency with 2 choices, but they have to be acceptable choices. We know 6.5 isn't great, but it's acceptable. But we have to be prepared to live with that.
Yeah.
It may be a short time.
One thing I would like to just add, just by revisiting the slide, I know that you're saying, okay, yeah, we are regenerating free cash, we're getting investment income above, and that won't last forever. So that's something to keep in mind. But we do have evidence of our costs going up 9.5 million more than what 2.5%. So we really do have a structural deficit that has been growing. Just because we're generating some investment income, but by the way, that we can't really rely on every year because we don't know what's going to happen in the economy. We have to be very conservative about how we project investment income because prior to inflation and prior to interest rates going up, we were getting $200,000 to $300,000 in investment income. And now we're getting like 4 or 5 million. I can't include 5 million knowing that it could potentially go down. So it's really a hard number because we're really getting some numbers here from investment income that we can't count on being there in the long term. The other thing is we borrowed this money, and while we're holding money, we are investing and we're getting money that isn't going to be, we're investing money that's not going to be there in the future. We're going to spend it on the project. So there's a lot of things at play here. I know that we'll get the $3 million, but I still do believe that you really do have this deficit here in the background. They tell you don't use free cash as part of your operating budget because, it's not a good practice. I think that we're justified in doing it because we do have this discipline built into our budget, but I still believe that we can document that our costs have gone up well above $6.5 million.
So I sense this board doesn't want to present to the taxpayer a no free cash usage. Even within that, we want to count on,
Yeah.
if not the 3 million, some amount of it, because that's just gonna be a lot. So 6.5 and 8 sound like sound okay. There's a difference between the two. I don't, do we want to?
My only logic for 7.5 was that you did a little buffer of 500K, and that buffer can come out of the free cash use. So we are still going towards using less free cash. And now, since we've been using so much free cash, it's just a little buffer.
Yeah, I mean, so you're not gonna put 7.5
It's not gonna.
on it. We're gonna just, you're gonna pick one, or you're gonna have a delta between the two. So,
That's
all right.
And then if it fails, you default to 6.5.
I hear what you're saying about wanting to have a lower option, but I don't want to assume failure here. I keep hearing that and
Well, that's planning, you're just planning for it. It's not.
The other thing is,
not
if you go with a higher number, in the beginning, you're using no free cash, which gives you more wiggle room in the years to come for the unexpected to use free cash. You have to kind of look at it in different perspectives. I mean, we are planning that lower number to use 3 million, but you could look at it and say, if we did get the higher number right off the cuff, we could go to 0 for free cash and start building up and have more years to spare. So you gotta look at it a lot of different ways in terms of, because we're seeing no end in sight for some of the inflation benefits and we don't know,
Which, if there's a higher tier option, I still don't like a no free cash option in year one. If we pass a higher tier, I would think that would be I would want to see that as a gradual introduction, so,
a higher tier buys us more time.
Exactly, because we basically get, instead of having to vote on a $6 million override now and a $3 million override in 3 years, we could just vote on the bigger override but only raise my taxes this much. Smaller.
we can always do that.
Right, it's, actually, I'd say, what if there were 2 tiers where the tax impact in year one was the same?
Confused voters.
I know confused
I don't
voters,
get.
but
They vote for the low.
they vote for the
Yeah.
lower one, probably, yeah.
All right.
Like, come back and ask me a couple
So.
You know,
why
no,
don't-
which is fair. I think that's totally fair. It's not the end of the world.
So, well, let Tom Wise make a brief comment and then we're gonna pick something. Go ahead, Tom. We also don't know what the school, all of these may still not give the schools enough, so maybe that's good to hear your Tom.
I'm not going to say too much on the schools, Marianne. I just wanted to say, I think you guys have had a vigorous debate. You've gone around in circles, but I think the two numbers are staring in your face, right? I think 9.8 and 6.5 are the two numbers. One gets you fully free of free cash, but it's a big enough difference between 6.5, and you can justify what you're going to get with that. 6.5 is the number that the town manager is comfortable with, but then you're not going to regenerate it as much, so it's not going to last as long. So I think your two numbers are there. You can obviously go back and forth if you choose, but you seem to have settled on two numbers, and the two numbers, in my mind, are pretty straightforward based upon what we've been presented and what we're seeing here. 6.5 and 9.8.
So. I always like it.
We might have
A little buffer, but we can vote for it.
We could have 6.58 and 9.8.
Really?
No, I know.
We just do 6.5
Yeah,
and
more,
9.5
it's fine.
for the CP list.
6.5 and 9.5.
Instead of 9.8.
Well,
I mean, especially.
9.8 covers the structural, but she's gonna reduce the position, right, and get closer to 9.5.
If you want me to get to 9.5, I'll reduce the position to get to 9.5, and
Yeah, I
that's
do.
not a position, that's.
You just bother.
I'm still cutting a lot of people, at 6.5. Or I'm sorry, at 9, no, it's probably the same amount of cuts still at 9.8. But 9.8 is the structural deficit today. It's higher tomorrow. I mean, it's in FY 28, that's a structural deficit. It's higher after that. We can still, with the capital plan that's been talked about, sustainable.
Okay.
I think it puts us in a much stronger financial position. If it passes, but it may not.
All right, so you wanted 7.5, other people said 6.5, can we split the difference and call it 7? And just say 7 and 9.8, and so that gives you,
Can we recycle that? Everybody's so happy.
I'm about to say, I would support the lower level of 7 if and only if part of the idea is give you your weekly recycling. Please stop thinking about it.
To go to 7,
Yes.
that would make sense, that would be a fair trade.
Right, I mean, that is a, literally everyone has to deal with trash and recycling.
so I'm gonna call for, do we approve 2 tiers to recommend to the select board, who knows what they'll do, of 7 and 9.8, let's do a vote, because it's getting late. How
You
many?
need a motion, right?
Oh, I'm
So-
sorry.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second, and so let's take a vote on 7 and 9.8. How many of us are yes? We've got 1, 2. Is it unanimous?
Unanimous.
Oh, good. Yay.
Great job.
All right, so,
Left leg is so safe.
yeah, I know. So we have a couple of more agenda items and it's getting late, so I would maybe say we, yeah, I think we don't,
Motion to adjourn.
yeah, second. Yeah, the minutes can certainly wait. And- All right, second, how many people, let's do adjourn? Yeah, the meetings we're gonna wait is.
I would vote to approve minutes first, so, but so what was the count in the adjournment vote? It was.
It was everybody.
So we voted 7-1 to adjourn, very well.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Everyone to adjourn.
Yeah. Would not have helped.
Pretty much, the select board still needs to adjourn, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think we only have 2 people on, so we just de facto adjourn, but
Karen,
thank
we
you
have,
all.
we have
Oh.
3 people on, Karen.
Okay,
no,
sorry, I
that's
haven't been
fine.
able to see you.
2 Karens and a Chris.
Yeah, so motion to adjourn, one of you guys?
Second,
Great, Chris
yes.
and Karen,
Yep,
and Karen Herrick, so we're adjourned, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, thank you,
So we're
everybody.
gonna have another meeting.
Um,